Standing before a vast army in a towering fortress, a masked woman looks on in disbelief. She calls out to Elk Kinesis, questioning if he truly plans to challenge them all by himself, asserting that even someone of his fame cannot possibly defeat an army of such immense size. Believing he is completely outmatched, the army's archers are ordered to fire. However, as the arrows rain down upon Elk Kinesis, he remains entirely unfazed, stopping every single projectile in its tracks with his overwhelming power. With a simple snap of his fingers, Elk Kinesis sends the volley of arrows hurtling back at the army. The soldiers are caught off guard, and the front line is instantly decimated. Panicked, the army realizes their front line has fallen, and a commander desperately orders all remaining units to launch a full-scale attack. The soldiers are suddenly gripped by confusion as a violent tremor shakes the ground. Their terror peaks when they look back to see massive pieces of the mountain floating effortlessly in the sky. Before they can react, the floating debris rains down with devastating force, crushing the army beneath the weight of the mountain. The soldiers watch in absolute terror, unable to comprehend the scale of the destruction before them. Standing calmly amidst the floating mountain shards, Elk Kinesis reveals the truth. This devastating power comes from telekinesis, the very skill once mocked as the weakest in history. The narrative shifts to explain the fundamental laws of this world. When a child turns 10, they are blessed by the gods with a unique skill. These bestowed abilities are absolute, determining a person's future profession and their place in society. As time passed, a young Elk Kinesis reached this pivotal moment, letting out a loud cry as his own destiny was revealed. Exhausted and panting, a young Elk Kinesis concentrates intensely, reaching out his hand in a desperate attempt to move a single apple resting on a table. After pushing himself to the limit, a young Elk Kinesis manages to nudge the apple just a bit further than the day before. Emma, the family maid, cheers him on with genuine excitement, calling his progress amazing. However, Elk can only let out a tired laugh, feeling discouraged by the insignificance of his achievement, and lamenting how truly useless his telekinesis skill is. Exhausted and defeated, young Elk slumps over the table, feeling worthless because his skill is so weak compared to the expectations of a duke's son. Emma gently takes his hand, urging him to look up. As he does, Elk thinks back to a promise his mother once made with Rosa-sama. Emma looks at Elk with warmth and determination, promising that she and Rosa-sama will always be by his side. Her words bring back a poignant memory for Elk, a moment with his mother, who had once encouraged him to give his all, no matter what blessing the gods bestowed upon him. The moment of peace is shattered as Elk's siblings, Sarissa and Roshuo, arrive to ridicule him. They laugh at his useless skill and insult Emma, calling her an ugly maid. Enraged, Elk shouts at them to stop their cruelty, but Roshuo quickly silences him, drawing his blade. Roshuo coldly warns Elk that if he makes a single move, Emma will be the one to suffer the consequences. Sarissa reminds Roshuo that they are late for their practice, and Roshuo takes the opportunity to further belittle Elk, bragging that they are learning from a teacher worthy of epic skills. Elk tells them to just leave, but Sarissa adds a final note. Their father wants to speak with all the siblings tonight. With a smug smirk, Roshuo bids Elk a mocking farewell. Elk introduces himself as the first son of the Kinesis Duke family. Despite his position as the heir, he reveals a painful truth. He has always been an outsider in his own home, a feeling of isolation that predates the discovery of his skill. Elk reveals the tragic truth behind his isolation. His father, the Duke, had married his mother solely for political reasons, devoid of any love. With his mother gone, Elk is left alone, having lost the only person who ever truly loved him. Elk clenches his fist, haunted by the thought that if he had received a skill his father actually valued, he might have been accepted as a true member of the family. Despite his internal pain, he apologizes to Emma, who gently tells him it's fine and offers to fetch a first aid kit. Straining with all his might, Elk manages to make an apple roll across the table. Emma is thrilled by the small victory, cheering him on for his progress. However, the moment of peace is interrupted as a knock sounds at a door within the mansion, and a voice grants permission to enter. Elk enters the room only to be met with a devastating decree. His father, the Duke, demands that he step down as the heir, officially removing him from the list of candidates for the next Duke. Shocked and desperate, Elk tries to argue that tradition dictates the firstborn should inherit, but the Duke shuts him down, stating that such a right only applies to those with a skill worthy of a Duke. While the Duke grants him a small chance because he is the son of the late Rose, leaving Elk that telekinesis is a worthless skill, leaving Elk crushed and powerless. The Duke sets a harsh condition. If Elk can defeat Roshuo in a duel, he will be recognized as the heir. However, if he loses, he must formally surrender the title to his brother. Roshuo, eager to seize the position, smugly challenges Elk, mocking him with a confident and malicious smile. Sarissa pretends to stop the conflict, only to immediately tease Elk, asking if he intends to run away because he's scared of Roshuo. Roshu adds to the pressure, smugly asking Elk what he plans to do. While his siblings continue to belittle him, Emma looks on with a bright, encouraging smile, telling Elk that she will be cheering him on. With a newfound determination, Elk looks Roshu in the eye and declares his acceptance of the duel. He is resolute in his decision to fight for his right as the heir. Roshuo hands Elk a practice sword, smugly declaring that the first person to admit defeat will be the loser. As Elk prepares himself, he reflects on the challenge ahead, noting that while Roshuo possesses the powerful swordmaster's skill, he might not be completely used to it yet. Gripping the practice sword tightly, Elk steels his resolve. He refuses to give up easily, believing that there is still a chance for him to prevail. Elk and Roshuo lock eyes, both filled with determination and confidence. Then the signal rings out. Begin. Elk and Roshuo face off in the training hall, their practice swords ready. With Duke Kinesis watching over them, the tension peaks as the duel finally commences. Elk lunges forward with a loud cry, striking at Roshuo. However, after a sudden clash, both of their practice swords end up lying on the floor. Roshuo calmly asks if Elk is surrendering already, leaving Elk shocked and confused, as he believed their sword skills were equal just a moment ago. Frustrated by the inexplicable situation, Elk curses in annoyance. Nearby, Emma is left completely stunned by the sudden turn of events. Elk suddenly slams onto the floor, unable to maintain his balance. As he struggles to move, he feels his body becoming as heavy as lead, leading him to realize that Sarissa might be using her skill to sabotage him while she watches with a smug smile. Roshuo stands over the immobilized Elk, offering a cold, mocking apology. Elk struggles to react, realizing he has lost control of his voice and body. With a sadistic smile, Roshuo declares he will show mercy by letting Elk die peacefully, as the tip of his sword mysteriously sharpens, leaving Elk feeling utterly helpless. Elk gazes at his family, and the others watching the scene with a look of disbelief, questioning why no one is stopping this cruelty. Amidst his despair, a cold voice asks what he exactly intends to do. A chilling realization washes over Elk. Looking at the cold indifference of those around him, he begins to wonder if this entire situation was a setup, if they had planned to kill him from the very start. As the horrifying truth sinks in, Elk's gaze hardens. The shock of betrayal transforms into a cold, piercing stare, marking a dark turning point in his heart. Suddenly, Elk finds himself sitting in a vast, unfamiliar field of flowers. Confused and disoriented, he checks his chest, only to realize that the wound he had suffered is gone. Lying on his back in the serene field, Elk wonders if he has passed away, noting that the place feels like the heaven has seen in pictures. As he catches his breath, he reflects on his life, admitting that he never cared about being the heir. He simply wanted to be a part of his family, never realizing how much they truly hated him. As Elk lies in the mysterious field, a cheerful girl with wings and a halo suddenly appears, calling him a lost little boy and curiously asking if Emma is his girlfriend. Overwhelmed by grief and guilt, Elk can only whisper apologies to his mother and Emma. Peppina leans in closer to Elk, her expression curious and playful as she waits for him to answer, while Elk can only look up at her in stunned silence. Startled by the winged girl, Elk exclaims in confusion, wondering who she is and how she can fly. Peppina, slightly surprised herself, teases him for his quick reflexes before formally and playfully introducing herself as the goddess Peppina, confidently asking if Hez surprised by her cuteness. Peppina playfully asks Elk if he has something to say, and he admits that he has heard of her. Internally, Elk notes that she looks nothing like the depictions in books or sculptures, and is overwhelmed by her immense energy. Peppina then explains that he is currently in the world between life and death, a rare occurrence that happens only once every few thousand years, which is why she had to appear. Peppina poses confidently, teasing Elk for being mesmerized by her beauty. She quickly shifts the tone, telling the lucky boy that the important part starts now. Meanwhile, Elk looks on, questioning if this beautiful yet eccentric person is truly a god. Suddenly clings to Elk, excitedly announcing that before he returns to the living world, she will grant him any super rare skill he desires. She tells him to prepare to be amazed by the generosity of the great goddess Peppina. Confused by the offer, Elk tells Peppina that he doesn't need a skill. Peppina tries to coax him into praising her beauty and kindness, even pretending she can't hear him when he repeats his refusal. Despite her insistence that any other child would be thrilled, Elk remains indifferent, leaving Peppina dramatically devastated by the unexpected rejection. Peppina is bewildered by Elk's refusal, reminding him that legendary heroes once received their skills in this very place. She urges him to dream big, but when that fails, she brings up Emma, asking if he doesn't want to show her a new, improved version of himself. Elk is left stunned by the mention of the girl. Peppina shows Elk a vision of his own unconscious body, where Emma is seen weeping and waiting for him to wake up. Hoping this will sway him, Peppina suggests that getting a rare skill is the best way to make Emma happy. But Elk firmly rejects the offer, remembering a promise he made to his mother to do his best regardless of his skill. He declares that he cannot betray Emma, who has always believed in and supported him. Elk firmly declares his resolve, stating that he wants to become strong enough to protect Emma using his own strength and his telekinesis skill. He then desperately begs the goddess Peppina to train him, promising to do anything. Peppina is left completely stunned, having never encountered a soul with such stubborn determination. Peppina's bewilderment quickly turns into excitement. She declares that she likes Elk and agrees to grant his wish to train him. Off-screen, Elk is shocked and deeply grateful for her help, while Peppina privately thinks that this will be an entertaining way to pass the time. Peppina warns Elk that mastering telekinesis is a long and arduous process, but he readily accepts the challenge. Driven by the image of Emma weeping for him, Elk resolves to endure any amount of time to transform his pathetic skill into true power so he can return to her. Just as he sinks into his determination, Peppina playfully snaps him back to reality. Elk asks exactly how many years the training will take. Peppina tells him to stop being sentimental and promises to ensure he finishes in record time for Emma's sake. However, she cheerfully reveals that the training will last for 2,000 years, leaving Elk completely stunned. Elk declares that no matter what rare skill he could have received, his decision is final. He swears on his mother's grave that he will become stronger, believing that returning as anything less than a proper man would be meaningless. With a renewed spirit, he commits himself to the next 2,000 years of training for the sake of Emma and his own growth. Paivtana laughs at his intensity and tells him to keep up, as the training finally begins. Just as the training is set to begin, the reality of the time frame finally sinks in. Elk freezes in shock, suddenly terrified that spending 2,000 years in this realm will cause him to age and die in the real world. Peppina playfully shuts down Elk's worries, reminding him that as a goddess, she is well aware of human lifespans. She reassures him that the divine realm follows a completely different flow of time than the real world, easing his fear of dying of old age. Elk admits he understands the time difference, but he still has doubts. Peppina quickly puts his mind at ease, revealing that the staggering 2,000 years of training will only equate to about 6 years passing in the real world. Elk asks with worry about the body he left behind in the real world, fearing it might rot. Peppina quickly reassures him, explaining that as long as his soul is present in the divine realm, his physical body will stay alive and continue to grow. Peppina explains that Emma is looking after Elk's physical body in the real world, ensuring its safety. Sensing his hesitation, Peppina asks if Skiss and suggests he simply take a rare skill to return home immediately. However, Elk shouts a resounding refusal, his intense determination startling the goddess. With a look of absolute determination, Elk shouts that no matter what rare skill he could have received, he chooses the hard path to become a proper man. He swears on his mother's grave to see this through for Emma and himself. Amused by his passion, Peppina laughs and tells him to keep up with her as the grueling training finally begins. With the training officially underway, Peppina begins by teaching Elk the basics of telekinesis, explaining that the scale of what one can move with their mind depends entirely on the user's ability. Peppina points toward a massive boulder to demonstrate the scale of telekinesis. Surprised by the size of the target, Elk asks if she really means that big rock, to which Peppina simply confirms. Peppina confirms with a simple yep, as she reveals the true scale of her example, a colossal boulder so massive that entire trees grow upon its surface, leaving Elk utterly speechless in shock. Peppina cheerfully announces that she has prepared a special guest for the day's training. She tells Elk that because he is so weak, physical strength is an essential component of training his telekinesis. Sensing something ominous, Elk can't help but feel a bad premonition. Peppina reveals the special guest's a menacing group of monsters from the demon world. While Elk is bewildered by her calling them Mary, Peppina suddenly commands him to run, warning that if he doesn't use his wits and strength to escape, he'll be eaten alive. A series of scenes illustrate the intensity of Elk's training. He is seen running for his life from the demon monsters, pulling massive boulders with ropes, and practicing his sword skills. Despite the exhaustion that leaves him collapsed on the ground, Peppina continues to push him. Eventually, Elk manages to overcome the monsters, earning a well done sign from the goddess as he pushes his limits to the absolute edge. Time passes as Elk pushes himself through his training. Peppina looks on with approval, praising him for his hard work. She is particularly impressed that he can now manipulate a colossal floating rock without the need for chanting, telling him that such a feat would have been enough to pass. Overwhelmed with joy, Peppina throws her arms around Elk in a tight hug. She tells him how proud she is, reflecting on how far he has come from the lost soul, who could barely move a small stone. Peppina tries to remember the name of Elk's younger brother, eventually recalling it as Roshuo. She mentions that Roshuo and his sister possess the powerful Sword Saint and Magic Saint skills, but Elk dismisses them as an easy win. With a determined look, Pipina reminds him that because she trained him personally, his victory is inevitable. Pipina enthusiastically challenges Elk to another round of sparring, laughing as they clash their swords. Elk accepts the challenge with confidence, his eyes filled with determination as he tells himself that he will surely win. As their time together comes to an end, Pipina clings to Elk, and suggesting if he really has to leave, and suggesting stay for another 1,000 years. Elk firmly declines, stating his intention to return. Pipina teases him, asking if he's feeling lonely, which he quickly denies. In a soft moment, Pipina admits she truly enjoyed her time with him, and thanks him, however. Elk's blunt response that the experience wasn't fun at all prompts Pipina to laugh and tease him for being too honest to ever be popular. As the moment of departure arrives, Pipina tells Elk that everything he has experienced and learned will carry over to the real world, though she warns him that the transition might hurt. Suddenly remembering Emma, she encourages him to go back and show her the strongest form of telekinesis, officially approved by the goddess herself. With a determined look in his eyes, Elk gives a firm response, acknowledging Pipina's words as he readies himself to return to the real world. Pipina pulls Elk into a warm embrace, offering her final words of encouragement. She guarantees that with the power he has attained through his training, he will not lose to anyone. Pipina gives Elk a sudden playful kiss on the cheek, leaving him completely flustered. With a cheerful bye-bye, she waves him off. As he begins his journey back to the real world, Elk calls out her name, Pipina, in a final farewell. Elk awakens in his bed, whispering a final thank you to Pipina as he returns to reality. Disoriented and in slight pain, he realizes he has truly come back. He is surprised to discover that while he spent ages training, only 6 years have passed in the real world, making him 16 years old. Meanwhile, Emma stands outside, her expression filled with longing. Just as Elk awakens to his new reality, Emma enters the room. Overwhelmed with emotion, she stares at him in disbelief, barely able to whisper his name. Elk calls out Emma's name with a warm smile. Overwhelmed with emotion, Emma tearfully asks if it is really him. Unable to contain her joy, she throws herself into Elk's arms, hugging him tightly as they finally reunite. Elk gently wipes away Emma's tears, comforting her and expressing his happiness at seeing her again. He then asks her to tell him everything that has happened during his absence. Emma begins to tell Elk about the horrors she faced after his disappearance. She reveals that 6 years ago, the Kinesis family heartlessly ordered her to dispose of his body and then dismissed her from their service. Emma continues her heartbreaking story. Admitting that she couldn't bear to bury Elk instead, she took his body with her, amazed that despite the passing time, his cold form never decayed and remained perfectly preserved. Emma tearfully reveals that she always believed Elk would one day wake up and had waited faithfully for this moment. Deeply moved, Elk thanks her sincerely, acknowledging that he is only alive because of her. Overwhelmed, Emma hurriedly asks him to raise his head. Elk tells Emma that he is no longer a noble and asks her to stop using the honorific Sama. However, just as they are speaking, a sudden and loud shout screams for everyone to run away. Chaos erupts as orcs storm the village, sending residents screaming in terror. Elk, frustrated that their heartfelt conversation was cut short, looks out to see the monsters closing in on their position. Recognizing the danger, he tells Emma to stay put where it's safe while they find a way to escape. Emma is left stunned and confused as Elk suddenly leaps from the window. With a calm focus, Elk activates his power, commanding the surrounding debris to float as he dives headfirst into the chaos of the orc invasion. Elk glides through the air, effortlessly controlling the floating debris around him. Below, the village guards are shocked to see him, with one shouting to the captain, mistakenly believing that the monsters have received powerful reinforcements. With a calm and focused expression, Elk launches the floating debris like high-speed projectiles, slamming them into the Sora. As the monsters are struck in their vital spots, Elk decides to end the fight quickly, preparing to finish them all off at once. Floating effortlessly amidst the debris, Elk looks down at the Sora with utter disdain. Annoyed by their mindless violence, he shouts for them to stop destroying people's homes, his gaze sharp and determined as he prepares to eliminate the nuisance. With a sudden and violent motion, Elk slams the massive collection of debris downward, obliterating the Sora in a devastating, crushing blow. The villagers stare up in disbelief at the floating figure in the sky. They are completely stunned, unable to comprehend how one person could take down all the orcs in a single go. Standing amidst the rubble of the defeated orc horde, Elk watches the debris float effortlessly around him. He feels satisfied, noting that his power works just fine and offering a brief thanks to the gods. Standing over the fallen monsters, Elk looks on with a cold, indifferent gaze. He tells them that the debris used to crush them was from the houses they had destroyed. declaring that this outcome is simply karma. Emma rushes toward Elk, calling his name with desperation. Elk tries to remain calm, reminding her that he told her to stay home, but Emma tearfully points out that he ran away barefoot. Overwhelmed with emotion, she clings to him, questioning the incredible power he just displayed. While Elk is left speechless, a voice from nearby suddenly calls out to them. The unknown person who called out reveals himself as the captain of the village guard. He approaches Elk with immense gratitude, thanking him for saving the village from the orc invasion. Elk laughs it off, simply stating that he did what had to be done, while Emma sighs in relief, feeling finally safe. Elk offers to handle the cleanup of the debris so the village guards can focus on tending to the injured, claiming he has plenty of energy after his long sleep. Emma is shocked, believing it's impossible for one person to do it alone, but Elk explains that his telekinesis will make the process much faster. He expresses his heartfelt desire to restore Emma's hometown as quickly as possible. With a confident smile, Elk extends his hand and activates his power. Massive pieces of rubble, crates, and even a heavy cart are lifted effortlessly into the air, stunning everyone as he begins to clear the street with ease. Having efficiently cleared the ruins, Elk observes that most of the area is now clean, though a lingering thought seems to cross his mind. The Adin begin to notice him, calling out to the big brother who saved their home. However, Elk is preoccupied, staring at the mountain of defeated Sora and wondering what to do with the huge pile of corpses. A villager excitedly mentions that orc meat is delicious, catching Elk by surprise. While he was aware of this fact, he admits he has never actually tasted it. The suggestion to eat the monsters leaves him momentarily bewildered. The village decides to turn the Sora remains into a communal feast, with a cook taking charge of the butchering. As the children excitedly run off to call their parents, Elk holds 2 bowls of food and suddenly notices someone in the crowd. Elk approaches Emma and hands her a bowl of food. When she thanks him using the formal sama, Elk stops her, requesting that she no longer use such a formal title. Flustered and unsure of how to address him, Emma eventually settles on calling him Elkson, to which Elk simply reminds her that her food will get cold. Elk takes a bite of the food and finds the taste acceptable. He tells Emma that they can work on dropping the honorifics later, while Emma is left stunned by the unexpected flavor of the meal. Elk is wide-eyed with surprise, exclaiming that the orc meat is actually delicious. As he eats happily beside a smiling Emma, he notes that looks can be deceiving and feels that he has already assimilated into the village. Emma tells Elk that the villagers have accepted him and are buzzing about the arrival of a powerful skilluser, admitting that it makes her truly happy. Overwhelmed by the warmth, Elk thinks back to the thousands of years of trauma and relentless effort he faced during his training, feeling deeply honored that his hard work has finally led to this moment of acceptance. Elk suddenly asks Emma if she would live with him. Taken aback by the unexpected request, Emma stares at him in shock, her mind racing as she thinks about her house and her life in the village. Seeing Emma's extreme reaction, Elk suddenly becomes flustered himself. He realizes he was far too blunt with his request, and frantically tries to take it back to rephrase it. However, Emma, completely overwhelmed with emotion, softly manages to say okay. As the moment lingers, Emma recalls the 6 years she spent watching over Elk while he remained motionless. She reflects on how that time created an inexplicable bond within her, leading her to admire the strong man he has now become. Emma looks back at the time she spent watching over a motionless Elk, her heart heavy with the thought of whether something so painful could ever happen again. Emma clings tightly to Elk, her expression filled with desperation. She confesses her deepest fear, telling him that she doesn't want him to go somewhere far away again because she wouldn't be able to bear it. Elk looks at her, surprised by the intensity of her emotion. Touched by Emma's heartfelt confession, Elk tells her that her words make him truly happy. However, his expression turns solemn as he apologizes, reminding her that there is still something he must accomplish. Emma looks at Elk with a surprised and curious expression, repeating his words in confusion as she tries to understand what this mysterious task is. Emma asks with concern if Elk is planning to return to the Kinesis family, reminding him that he was already removed from their family records. Elk simply responds with a firm no. With a determined expression and a clenched fist, Elk rejects the idea of returning to his former life. He doesn't want his title back, he is going for revenge. In a glimpse of what's to come, Elk puts his resolve into action. As his enemies struggle and question the nature of his terrifying power, Elk calmly reveals the source of his absolute dominance: telekinesis. Emma's eyes widen in shock, her voice trembling as she repeats the word revenge in utter disbelief. Elk lets out a light laugh. Trying to calm Emma's nerves, he tells her not to be so tense, and suggests she think of his goal as merely setting things straight. Reflecting on his journey, Elk acknowledges that he was reborn after dying once. He realizes that to truly move forward, he must first deal with the burden weighing on his heart. and with that in mind, he decides to make a proposal. Following up on his desire to move forward, Elk suggests a surprising idea to Emma. Noting that they are both 16, he asks why they shouldn't go to school, leaving Emma utterly bewildered by the suggestion. The institution Elk has in mind is the Gallatin Royal Academy, a place where the Kinesis family has been enrolled for generations. He is certain that Rashuo and Sarissa will be attending there as well. Elk adds that beyond his plans, the academy is a place where they can make friends, study, and explore the world. More importantly, he believes it is the perfect setting for siblings to settle their rivalries fair and square, without any unnecessary distractions. Emma hesitates, doubting that a commoner like her has the right to attend such a prestigious academy. However, Elk quickly reassures her, explaining that anyone can enroll as long as they can pay. To prove his point, he produces a platinum coin worth 1,000 gold coins, leaving Emma stunned by its immense value. Elk remembers the moment he received the platinum coin, a farewell gift from Peppina, who cheerfully told him that he would surely need it when the time came. With the paperwork finalized, Elk and Emma successfully complete their enrollment procedures. Emma's parents are deeply grateful for the opportunity, and as the two set off to leave town, a crowd of people gathers to see them off and wish them luck on their new journey. Their journey brings them to the imposing and grand Gallatin Kingdom, the heart of the realm where the Royal Academy awaits. Having arrived at the Gallatin Royal Academy, Elk and Emma stand before the imposing architecture of the school. Noticing Emma's apprehension, Elk asks if she is nervous. Emma admits that she is overwhelmed by the grandeur of the city and the academy, to which Elk simply tells her that it's normal to feel that way. Just as Elk and Emma are taking in the scale of the academy, a voice calls out to them. A man approaches, asking if they are new students. Elk responds to the man's question with a blunt confirmation, while Emma looks on with a surprised expression. Leon looks flustered, realizing that his sudden interruption might have seemed suspicious. He quickly tries to smooth things over, excitedly mentioning that he is also on his way to the entrance ceremony. The man introduces himself as Nick, a merchant's son from the royal capital. He then introduces his sister, Mary, and mentions that their parents run the Senegal Trading Company. Elk introduces himself and Emma to the siblings. After exchanging pleasantries, Nick suggests that they all head to the entrance ceremony together, to which they readily agree. As they begin walking together, Nick turns to them and asks, "By the way, which one are you?" Nick clarifies his question, asking if they are in the combat or commerce track. Elk looks back at him, puzzled, and asks, "Which one?" The academy is divided into two paths: the commerce department for those who wish to use their skills for a trade or profession, and the skill department for those aiming to become knights, adventurers, or master combat skills. Elk confirms the arrangement, stating that Emma will be in the commerce department, and he will be in the skill department. Nick notes that Elk is in the same department as Mary, and curiously asks him what his combat skill is. Elk calmly responds to Nick's question, revealing that his skill is telekinesis. Nick's eyes widen in utter shock. He is stunned by Elk's answer, unable to believe that his skill is actually telekinesis. Mary scolds her brother Nick for being rude by asking too many questions about someone's skill. Realizing his mistake, Nick quickly apologizes. Mary tells everyone to hurry to the entrance ceremony. Meanwhile, Elk thinks to himself about how telekinesis is considered a useless skill in general society. The scene shifts to the academy's entrance ceremony. As the event begins, the new student representatives, Elwood and Yato, make their appearance. Elk and his friends watch from the crowd, whispering in surprise that there are two representatives this year. Crown Prince Elwood of the Garway Kingdom is introduced to the crowd. As a genius born with 3 skills, he is revealed to be a rare triple skill user, sparking immediate admiration among the students. Elk looks on thoughtfully, realizing that the world is truly vast. He admits to himself that he had expected Rashuo and Sarissa to show up as well. A wide view of the crowded hall reveals the sea of new students. Suddenly, excitement ripples through the crowd as voices announce that they have finally arrived among the new students. The entrance ceremony finally concludes, and the group decides to head to the central plaza for a meal. As they walk, they mention that Mary has already saved seats for them. However, upon arrival, they find Mary in the middle of a heated argument, fiercely defending her claim to the seats against someone who arrived later. The man confronting Mary is revealed to be Marcos Paisley, the eldest son of Baron Paisley. With a smug associate by his side, Marcos demands that Mary hand over the seats she claimed. However, Mary doesn't care about his title, shouting back and questioning how a true noble could be so ashamed as to threaten others. Furious at being called out, Marcos Paisley swings his arm aggressively, who shields herself in terror. Watching the scene from a distance, a blonde man named Gumbo simply finds the entire situation noisy. Marcos Paisley swings his hand forward, attempt to strike Mary. With a look of pure rage, Marcos Paisley delivers a brutal strike to Mary, who cowers helplessly as the blow lands. Emma quickly kneels beside Mary, frantically asking if she is okay. Nearby, Roshuo Kinesis shouts in indignation, questioning the violence as she recovers from the shock. Mary softly whispers brother. Shocked and confused, Marcos Paisley screams in agony, demanding to know what skill was used on him and who is responsible for the sudden attack. With a calm and indifferent expression, Elk reveals the name of the skill he used. Telekinesis in the background, Mary and Ciel look on in utter disbelief at the revelation. Marcos shouts in frustration. Refusing to believe the situation, Elk calmly asserts that he is indeed enrolled. Meanwhile, Elwood looks on with a skeptical expression, questioning how someone with a useless skill like telekinesis could have possibly gained admission to the school. Urged to release Gumbo, Elk calmly agrees with a sigh. However, he secretly decides to only release the man's arm, maintaining his grip through telekinesis. Gumbo's arm is violently flung back, leaving him in agony and frantically apologizing to Marcos. A blonde female student gasps in horror at the sight of the bleeding wound, her shock quickly turning into rage as she glares at Elk. With a cold and piercing gaze, Elk Kinesis looks at them indifferently, his voice calm yet threatening as he asks if they still want to continue. Intimidated by Elk's overwhelming power and the sight of Gumbo's injury, the group decides to back down. No, ill pass, one of them mutters as they walk away, while Elk watches them leave with a cold, silent gaze. As the tension settles and the others depart, Nick approaches Elk with a look of utter bewilderment, demanding to know what exactly happened. With the conflict over and his opponents gone, Elk Kinesis suddenly breaks the tension with a bright, cheerful smile, excitedly suggesting that it's time to eat. The scene shifts to the classroom of the skill department, Year 1, Class F, as Elk looks in on the other students. In the classroom, the class teacher, Shakuriki, clears his throat and introduces himself to the students. He then instructs the class to begin their introductions, asking for their names, places of origin, and their skills if they are willing to share. Shakuriki tells the class to just say whatever they like, and points to where the introduction should begin. As the class prepares, a light-haired student glances at Elk Kinesis, thinking to himself that Elk is being careless. The introductions proceed in the classroom. Yato introduces herself from Yamato, followed by the boisterous Gumbo from the Log Kingdom, who declares his ambition to become a knight. Finally, it is Elk's turn. He modestly introduces himself as being from the Dio Kingdom, with his skill revealed to be telekinesis. As Elk finishes his introduction, Gumbo looks at him with a smirk of disbelief, questioning if he heard the name of Elk's skill correctly. A heavy silence fills the room. Gumbo leans back in his seat, staring at Elk in disbelief, while the other students remain quiet, unsure of how to react to the news of his seemingly useless skill. Elk stands confidently, addressing his classmates. He admits that while telekinesis is widely considered a useless ability in this country, he doesn't share that opinion. However, Gumbo looks on with a smug expression, thinking to himself that Elk is merely a weakling who could never match a real combat skill. Just then, someone calls out to Gumbo. Gumbo is caught off guard by a sudden proposal. Shakuriki leans forward over his desk, suggesting that if Gumbo truly believes telekinesis is useless, he should simply fight Elk. Shakuriki decides to allow the confrontation, viewing it as a beneficial practice match and a good learning experience, especially with a martial arts tournament to determine the top students fast approaching. Shakuriki comments on the obvious friction between Elk and Gumbo, suggesting they have personal grudges to settle. As he speaks, he clicks a switch, preparing the environment for the upcoming practice match. The scene shifts to the academy training grounds. Elk thinks to himself about how unexpected it is to be in a mock battle on his very first day. Shakuriki asks if Elk and Gumbo are ready. Gumbo aggressively declares his desire to get the fight over with, while Elk calmly agrees. In a sudden comedic twist, Shakuriki ends up pinned to the ground under Elk's foot. With a loud shout, Shakuriki signals the start of the match, pitting Elk Kinesis against the eager Gumbo. As soon as the match begins, Elk Kinesis activates his skill, instantly shattering the earth and sending massive slabs of rock flying into the air. As the ground erupts around him, Gumbo is forced into a defensive stance, immediately preparing to unleash his own skill to counter Elk's overwhelming power. With a sudden burst of power, Elk Kinesis activates his skill, shouting telekinesis. The ground beneath him violently shatters and erupts, sending massive shards of earth flying into the air. The surrounding students watch in absolute disbelief as the sheer scale of his power devastates the training grounds. Gumbo counters Elk's attack by activating his skill, Steelification, boasting that his level 19 ability allows him to turn his entire body into iron. He claims to have never been wounded in his life. With a determined look, Gumbo lunges forward to strike Elk. Elk Kinesis calmly dodges Gumbo's attack, using his skill to shift his body out of harm's way. As Gumbo lunges forward, Elk counters instantly, unleashing a series of powerful, invisible forces that slam violently into the ground around Gumbo. Gumbo stands tall amidst the shattered ground, a smug expression on his face as he dismisses Elk's efforts. He claims the attacks are useless and don't affect him at all, challenging Elk to do better. Meanwhile, Elk remains calm, continuing to manipulate his telekinetic power with precision. Gumbo scoffs as he is spun around by Elk's power, convinced that no matter what Elk tries, his hardened body will remain unscathed. However, Elk Kinesis looks on with a calm expression, preparing to prove him wrong. Elk Kinesis creates a massive whirlwind, spinning Gumbo violently while questioning if he is truly sure of his invulnerability. As Gumbo is tossed around, Elk reveals his cold calculation. Even with a steel body, Gumbo's internal organs are still human. And by spinning him fast enough, he can bypass the armor to cause internal devastation. Gumbo is spun violently through the air until he finally passes out from the overwhelming force. Elk Kinesis relaxes his posture and lets out a small sigh, having successfully neutralized his opponent. Gumbo is left completely incapacitated, lying in a crater after the intense centrifugal force took its toll. Shakuriki looks down at the fallen student, remarking that such a result was inevitable given the speed of the attack, and orders that he be taken to the infirmary immediately. Elk Kinesis stands calmly nearby, having easily ended the confrontation. Shakuriki steps forward to address the crowd, enthusiastically announcing the conclusion of the fight. Elk Kinesis stands silently, waiting for the official result of the match. Just as Shakuriki is about to declare the winner, Gumbo suddenly rises from the rubble. Elk watches in disbelief, surprised that his opponent has recovered so quickly. Battered and exhausted, Gumbo forces himself to speak through the pain, declaring with sheer willpower that he is the man who will become a knight. A flashback reveals Gumbo's childhood in the Log Kingdom, a desolate land with nothing but mineral resources to offer. In a society where one could only be a miner or a vagrant, Gumbo found inspiration in his father, a commoner, who defied the odds to become a knight. His father was his only treasure and the source of his immense pride. As a child, Gumbo proudly tells his peers that his father is amazing for being a knight of the country. However, the other children dismiss his pride, claiming that a knight is nothing more than the king's servant. Because of these insults toward his father, Gumbo frequently finds himself in fights with the other children as he grows up. Gumbo remembers the joy of awakening his skill, believing it was his ticket to becoming a knight like his father. However, he soon learned that in the impoverished Log Kingdom, nobility was unnecessary, and only laborers were valued. Refusing to give up on his dream, Gumbo pleaded with his father to let him leave his homeland and seek his fortune in the great nation of Gallatin. Gumbo's father finally grants his wish, agreeing to send him to study in the Gallatin Kingdom. As Gumbo accepts, he is struck by the sight of his father's weathered hands and the eye he lost, realizing the heavy price his father paid in service to their nation. To live up to his father's expectations, Gumbo pushed himself to the absolute limit after entering the academy. He endured the arrogance of the nobles, acting like a servant, and even resorted to violence when he felt he had no other choice. Every struggle was a step toward his goal. Gumbo screams his resolve to become a knight, his body moving by sheer force of will despite his condition. Watching him, Elk is stunned, noting that it should be physically impossible for Gumbo to move at all after such a powerful telekinesis attack. Elk is baffled. He realizes that Gumbo isn't moving consciously, but is being driven by an overwhelming sense of willpower. He wonders how Gumbo is even capable of moving in such a state. Elk concludes that Gumbo is moving purely on the strength of his will to become a knight, driven by every emotion and desire within his heart, the very essence of his being. As Gumbo continues to defy logic by standing through pure will, Elk calmly begins to walk toward him. Confused and alarmed by Elk's sudden action, Shakuriki shouts out, demanding to know what he is doing. Elk comes to a stop right in front of Gumbo, staring at the man who refuses to fall even while unconscious. Elk looks at the unconscious Gumbo with a reflective expression, acknowledging Gumbo's violent tendencies, while admitting that he too shared that same nature in the past. Elk reflects on his past, remembering the relentless training he endured with Peppina. He recalls the agony of hitting his limit countless times, yet he continued to push forward. Elk recalls the fuel that kept him going through the agony of his training. It was an unwavering will for revenge against those who had wronged him that pushed him to transcend his limits. Elk looks at Gumbo, noting that the boy is still showing an incredible fighting spirit. Recognizing that determination, Elk decides that there is only one way he can truly respond to him. Elk extends his hands forward with absolute determination, preparing to deliver the final blow to Gumbo. With a final powerful surge of energy, Elk strikes Gumbo, declaring that this is the end. The impact of the attack leaves the training ground shattered. Yato looks on with a mysterious smile, intrigued by the display of telekinesis. While the others realize they need to call a healing instructor for the defeated Gumbo, Yato reflects on how long it has been since she encountered an opponent truly worth fighting. In the faculty office, a colleague asks Shakuriki-sensei about the sparring match that occurred immediately after enrollment. Shakuriki, appearing completely overwhelmed, admits that the result was entirely unprecedented in his entire teaching career. Shakuriki continues his explanation, detailing the clash between a student who could fight, even while unconscious, and a commoner, whose power was enough to demolish the entire martial arts arena. The teachers conclude that this year's incoming class will be anything but boring, noting that both Elk and Gumbo are merely first-year students. With the rain pouring outside, the academy cafeteria is packed with students. Elk notes the crowd but suddenly spots an opening. He excitedly calls out to Luca and Sia, pointing toward a free table for them to use. Just as Elk sets the food down on the table he thought was free, he realizes with a start that Gumbo is already there. Watching him with a stern look, Elk attempts to greet Gumbo, but the spiky-haired youth reacts aggressively, telling him to shut up and threatening him. Despite Gumbo's prickliness, Elk and his friends, Luca and Sia, proceed to sit down for their meal. However, their peace is interrupted by a shouting student who declares that the seat is reserved for Marcosama. Just as Nico claims the table for Marcos Paisley, the man himself arrives. Nico eagerly waves and calls out to him, but Marcos walks past with a stoic expression, carrying his tray and completely ignoring the situation. Stunned by the lack of response, Nico is left speechless and frustrated. Marcos Paisley completely ignores Nico's excitement and looms over El Kinesis. A flustered Nico stammers, trying to explain that the seat is reserved for Marcos. Nico curiously asks Marcos Paisley who the stranger is. Marcos, looking down on him, coldly replies that he wouldn't know some crude, classless thug like that, while Elk watches him with a sharp, focused gaze. Nico scoffs with a look of utter contempt, mocking the pathetic nature of someone who spent their time boasting and bullying others, only to be humiliated by a commoner's telekinesis. Nico bursts into loud, arrogant laughter while holding his food tray. He continues his cruel mockery, declaring that if he were the one who suffered such a pathetic defeat, he would simply drop out of the academy on his own. Indifferent to the surrounding noise, Marcos Paisley stands up and departs the cafeteria, with Rox following closely behind him. As the tension from Marcos Paisley's departure fades, El Kinesis casually manipulates several pairs of chopsticks with his telekinesis, calling out to Gumbo. Gumbo suddenly grabs Elk Kinesis by the collar, his expression tense. He warns Elk that he seriously hopes he isn't about to say something comforting. Caught off guard, Elk can only stammer, unable to find the right words. Gumbo continues to lash out, bluntly telling Elk Kinesis to shut up and get lost. Gumbo looks back with a sharp, annoyed expression, demanding to know what Elk just said. Gumbo looks at Elk with a serious expression, calling him an idiot and telling him to just do it. Suddenly, the other students erupt in cheers, eagerly urging Elk to knock Gumbo out once again, just like he did yesterday. Irritated by the noise and the crowd's arrogance, Gumbo snaps at them, calling them bastards for acting so high and mighty. The crowd's excitement reaches a fever pitch, with Avon shouting for Elk to teach Gumbo a lesson, and mocking him as a loser who could never be a knight. While Gumbo grips Elk's collar, and the Avon scream for him to do it, and get rid of the brute, Nick, Mary, and Yato quickly intervene, pleading with everyone to calm down and stop the commotion. The atmosphere in the cafeteria reaches a fever pitch as the surrounding Avon shout in unison, relentlessly urging Elk to take action and strike back at Gumbo. Amidst the chaotic cheering of the Avon, Elk Kinesis doesn't hesitate, throwing a decisive punch. After landing his blow, Elk Kinesis turns his attention to the noisy crowd. He tells them that he is only talking to Gumbo, and expresses his annoyance at their interference, challenging the Avon to face Gumbo themselves instead of just cheering from the sidelines. Yato looks on in shock at his sudden boldness. In a sudden move, Elk Kinesis uses his power to shut the Avon up, covering their mouths with invisible force to stop their noise and demands for a fight. With a cold and stern gaze, Elk Kinesis addresses the silenced crowd, telling them he would appreciate it if they stayed quiet, and asking if they all understand. A heavy silence descends upon the cafeteria, leaving Elk Kinesis and Gumbo facing each other in the sudden, oppressive stillness. With the cafeteria finally quiet, Elk Kinesis lets out a sigh of relief and adjusts his collar. He then turns his gaze toward Gumbo, coldly reminding him that he still has something to say. Gumbo coldly replies to Elk, stating that there isn't a single thing he wants to say to him. Elk Kinesis turns to his friends and informs them that he has something to do and will be leaving. One of the Avon looks on in confusion, questioning why he is leaving before he has even eaten his meal. Elk Kinesis turns his back and walks away, leaving his friends behind. Emma looks on with a worried expression, softly calling his name while others shout after him. Amidst their confusion, Elk's resolve echoes. He will not return as a noble, for he is driven by a singular desire for revenge. Emma watches Elk with a worried expression. Meanwhile, Elk recalls a specific day and the words he heard, which have left him feeling on edge ever since. As he walks, Elk remembers a voice from his past, recalling the fear that the academy would strip away the kindness of the person they once knew. In the memory, Emma smiles softly, admitting that seeing someone worry about Elk kinesis makes her feel a little relieved. The atmosphere turns somber as heavy rain pours down over a lonely building, marking a shift in the memory. The flashback continues, showing Leon collapsed against a wall, drenched by the heavy rain. He looks up with a pained and exhausted expression as a blinding light flashes across the sky. Leon looks back on his history with a sense of shame, recalling the harsh words of a blonde man who dismissed his dreams of becoming a knight and told him to just drop out and leave. Drenched by the pouring rain, Leon remains collapsed against the wall in despair. He looks toward Elk Kinesis, asking if he also thinks his story is pathetic. Gumbo shouts in frustration, reminding Elk that he was the one who mocked his introduction and asserting that he had already proven the worth of telekinesis during their mock battle. While Gumbo continues to demand who is to blame, a soaked Elk Kinesis calmly addresses him, suggesting they return indoors to get out of the rain. Elk Kinesis retorts, "That's exactly why," causing Gumbo to frown in annoyance. Gumbo snaps back, telling him that he is now just babbling on and stating the obvious. Elk Kinesis shouts with passion, his voice cutting through the rain. He tells Leon that he knows exactly how much he wants to be a knight and recognizes all the effort he has poured into his dream. Elk Kinesis stands over Gumbo, who sits silently on the ground. Elk reflects on their clash from the day before, stating that it brought him to a realization and asks Gumbo if he shared that same feeling. Gumbo is visibly shaken, sweat dripping down his face, as he shouts in a mix of confusion and irritation. He questions the contradiction in Elk's words and demands to know his true intentions, asking what Elk wants from him even if he were to acknowledge him. Elk Kinesis listens in silence, his expression calm and steady. In the middle of the downpour, Elk Kinesis extends his hand toward Gumbo, offering a silent gesture of connection. Elk Kinesis extends his hand with a calm expression, simply stating reconciliation. He suggests that since they weren't exactly on bad terms, they should make up. Gumbo is completely caught off guard, shouting in confusion and asking if Elk is stupid for thinking they are best friends. Elk Kinesis continues to press for a reconciliation, claiming that the seriousness of their fight creates a bond of friendship between them. Gumbo, still sitting on the ground, can only respond with a confused stare. Elk Kinesis continues his unexpected approach, bluntly pointing out that Marcos Paisley clearly doesn't care about Gumbo. With a straight face, he claims that he is actually more of a friend to Gumbo than Marcos ever was, leaving Gumbo completely stunned. Gumbo lets out a frustrated click of his tongue but finally gives in, admitting he was wrong to mock telekinesis. As they shake hands, he warns Elk that being friends doesn't mean he'll go easy on him next time. Elk simply laughs, promising to give it his all once again. With their misunderstanding resolved and a new friendship formed, Gumbo suggests it's time to head back. Elk agrees, and the two of them prepare to leave the area together. While walking back, Elk Kinesis catches Gumbo's attention to show him a flyer. He comments on the flashy design of the Skill Martial Arts Tournament announcement, which Gumbo quickly defends, explaining that it is one of the Academy's top 3 biggest annual events and that the committee puts a lot of effort into it. While looking at the flyer, Elk notes that the event is for freshmen and mentions that while solo battles are easy, they will need a third person for the team battles. Gumbo is completely caught off guard, suddenly realizing that Elk has already decided they will be teammates. A wide shot captures Elk Kinesis and Gumbo standing together in the academy hallway, their figures dwarfed by the towering presence of other students passing by around them. As Elk Kinesis and Gumbo stand together in the academy hallway, Sia approaches them looking toward the two boys. Sia turns to her brother, Marcos Paisley, and asks what he thinks of the academy. Marcos replies with cold indifference, stating that it is hardly a big deal and is simply full of nobodies. Nearby, Elk Kinesis looks on, his expression one of surprise as he overhears the conversation. Elk Kinesis stares in wide-eyed shock, completely taken aback by Marcos Paisley's blatant arrogance. Marcos Paisley and Sia continue walking down the academy hallway, unaware that they are being watched. A mysterious voice echoes, "Finally, I found them." Elk remains silent, but his fury is palpable. As he clenches his fist, the sheer intensity of his emotion causes the ground and the walls around him to splinter and crack under the pressure of his power. Elk Kinesis stands amidst the wreckage of the hallway, his overwhelming power radiating from him and shattering the floor and walls. His mind flashes back to his siblings, his anger fueling the destructive energy. The sheer force of Elk Kinesis' resentment manifests as a violent eruption of power, shattering the floor and sending debris flying into the air. Gumbo can only watch in stunned silence as the hallway is reduced to ruins around him. Amidst the flying debris and chaos, Gumbo is left in a state of panic. He shouts in confusion, wondering what has suddenly happened to Elk and if his skill has gone completely berserk. Gumbo screams in panic, begging Elk to stop as the destruction intensifies. He realizes that at this rate, the entire academy will be leveled. Meanwhile, Elk Kinesis stands in a trance-like state, his eyes glowing with an overwhelming and terrifying power. Realizing that Elk Kinesis has completely lost consciousness, Gumbo rushes to his side in a panic. Determined to bring him back, Gumbo activates his steelification skill, shouting that he will wake him up right now. As Gumbo activates steelification to wake his friend, a sudden shock blasts him backward. He clutches his arm in agony, completely caught off guard by the reaction. Gumbo is stunned, staring in disbelief as he realizes his steelified arm was shattered in an instant. Acknowledging that his current hardness is far too weak to get close, he determines to steelify his entire body and shrink himself down to push forward. Determined to reach Elk, Gumbo realizes he must use his entire body to withstand the overwhelming pressure of the telekinesis. He transforms himself into a single, dense mass of iron and shrinks his size to increase his durability. Just like this, he declares, now ready to push through the invisible force. Having transformed his body into a dense mass of iron to withstand the crushing force, Gumbo finally reaches Elk Kinesis. He gets right in his face and screams, "Snap out of it," desperately trying to bring him back to consciousness. Just as Gumbo manages to reach him, a powerful shockwave explodes, sending both Elk Kinesis and Gumbo flying backward across the devastated corridor. Gumbo lies sprawled on the debris, breathless and bewildered by the violent eruption. He looks over at the motionless Elk Kinesis and weakly calls out his name. Elk Kinesis stands still and silent in the wreckage. Gumbo, looking worn out and frustrated, sighs and mutters about how much Elk has put him through before clicking his tongue in annoyance. 1 week passes, and the scene shifts to the training ground. At a specialized facility within the academy grounds, Elk Kinesis focuses his power, manifesting a swirling sphere of telekinetic energy as he continues his training. The facility is a hub of activity, serving as a dedicated space where Aven practice mock battles and undergo rigorous skill enhancement training to hone their abilities. Leaning against the wall of the training facility, Elk Kinesis looks over at Gumbo and asks, "Hey, are you really okay now?" Gumbo cheerfully assures Elk that his injuries were nothing serious, explaining that the Academy's top-tier medical staff used advanced healing skills to restore him to full health by the end of the day. Elk remains silent for a moment, before softly apologizing for what happened. Elk reflects on the aftermath, noting that both he and Gumbo had been taken to the infirmary for treatment. Once he woke up in his dorm room, Emma and Nick were there to fill him in on everything that had happened. Elk reflects on the aftermath, noting that the damaged hallway had already been repaired. He also mentions that the teachers didn't scold him too harshly, as skill rampages are a common occurrence for students of their age. With a look of genuine regret, Elk Kinesis apologizes to Gumbo. As he walks beside Emma, he admits to himself that he never imagined he would lose control of his abilities in such a way. Gumbo puts his arm around Elk Kinesis, smiling warmly. He teasingly suggests that Elk actually means thank you, and reminds him that such exchanges are what friends do for one another. Elk agrees with Gumbo's sentiment about their friendship. Gumbo tells him not to worry about the previous incident, and brings up a more pressing matter. They are supposed to find a teammate for the martial arts tournament today. Gumbo explains that the Academy hosts 2 major events, the Commerce Skill Department's Skill Arts Festival and the Combat Skill Department's Skill Martial Arts Tournament. Since these events impact their grades and have strict entry deadlines, Gumbo urges Elk Kinesis to find a third teammate quickly for the team matches. Elk simply acknowledges the situation. Following Gumbo's warning about the deadline, Elk and Gumbo begin searching for their final teammate. However, their efforts are met with rejection, as both Yato and Mary decline to join. Just as they sit in discouragement, having been turned down by their top choices, a voice suddenly calls out to them from across the way. Suddenly, 2 massive spheres materialize in the air, prompting a panicked Gumbo to shout for Elk to run. But as the two look on with serious expressions, the wrecking balls simply drop to the ground, coming to a complete halt. As the spheres come to a halt, Gumbo impulsively punches one, shattering its surface. Meanwhile, Elwood looks on in shock, realizing that the person responsible for launching these massive wrecking balls is now coming toward them. The woman responsible for the wrecking balls finally reveals herself, questioning Elk and Gumbo's presence and telling them to train elsewhere. When asked if she was aiming for something, she arrogantly claims that her attacks are too fast for most people to even follow with their eyes. Yuri declares that her attack was meant to be a match. She dashes across the grounds with blinding speed, cursing how slippery Elk is before finally spotting him in the distance and shouting, "There you are." Yuri unleashes a series of powerful spheres, shouting that he won't be able to dodge, but with a sudden jump, Elk skillfully leaps over the onslaught, avoiding the attack completely. Yuri is left stunned and confused, unable to comprehend what is happening. Suddenly, a Sakurisa kinesis appears and delivers a powerful kick, striking Yuri with immense force. Yuri collapses onto the ground, completely overwhelmed by the sudden attack. Sarissa Kinesis stands before her, watching her defeated opponent. Sarissa Kinesis looks down at the fallen Yuri, teasing her for not being fast enough, though she admits it was a good match. Watching from a distance, Elwood and Elk Kinesis are impressed by her precision, noting that she defeated her opponent with absolute efficiency and no wasted movement. Sarissa Kinesis leaps into the air, blushing and beaming with happiness, as she gushes over the praise she just received. Elk and Elwood can only watch her sudden change in demeanor with expressions of utter confusion. Still buzzing from the praise, Sarissa Kinesis beams with energy as she introduces herself to Elk and Elwood. She cheerfully mentions that she is a first year from Class B, leaving both of them completely bewildered by her sudden friendliness. Sarissa Kinesis enthusiastically grabs both Elk and Elwood, her eyes sparkling with excitement as she praises them. She tells them they were both amazing, specifically mentioning the skill used to stop the wrecking ball, while Elk and Elwood look on in complete bewilderment. Sarissa turns her curiosity toward Elk, eagerly asking if his skill is magic-based or a special type since he doesn't appear to be a weapon user. She then shifts her attention to Elwood, noting his ripped physique and assuming he belongs to the physical enhancement category. Sarissa giggles mischievously, playfully challenging Elk and Elwood as if they are trying to escape her. While she enthusiastically agrees with them, Elk sighs and suggests they find another training ground, noting that they've unfortunately gotten tangled up with a weirdo. Just as Elk and Elwood attempt to walk away, Sarissa Kinesis activates her skill acceleration, dashing toward them with blinding speed. With a smug and confident expression, Sarissa Kinesis boasts about her ability, declaring that her speed is unmatched. Having shown off her acceleration skill, Sarissa leans in close to Elk, energetically demanding that he tell her what his skill is in return. Elk calmly reveals his skill as telekinesis. Sarissa is taken aback, repeating the name of the skill with a look of disbelief and confusion. Elk firmly reiterates that his skill is indeed telekinesis. However, Sarissa is completely unconvinced, arguing that such a simple skill couldn't possibly account for his capabilities, and teasingly accuses him of trying to keep his true power a secret. Elwood crosses his arms with a serious expression, speaking up with conviction to vouch for Elk Kinesis and insist that he is telling the truth. Sarissa Kinesis hums to herself, looking at Elk Kinesis with a curious expression as she considers whether his claim about his skill is actually true. Accepting Elwood's word, Sarissa Kinesis finally believes Elk's claim about his skill, much to Elwood's confusion. She then turns to Elk with a playful smile, inviting him to train together since she has a fondness for well-built muscles. With a flat expression, Elwood bluntly declines Sarissa's invitation to train, leaving Elk Kinesis watching the interaction. Elk Kinesis looks on in confusion as Sarissa Kinesis reacts with a bright smile, dismissively stating that it's fine since they aren't there to train today anyway. Sarissa Kinesis then reveals her true intention, asking if Elwood is looking for a teammate for the upcoming martial arts tournament and cheerfully offering to join his team. Sarissa Kinesis confidently declares that she is the strongest and fastest among all the students training there. She adds that since Elwood and Elk have great muscles, teaming up with them would make everything smooth sailing for her. Elk acknowledges that Sarissa's speed and power are well balanced, confirming her strength. Setting aside her obsession with muscles, Elwood agrees that they found a great teammate. He introduces Elk and Gumbo to her, but in her excitement, Sarissa realizes she hasn't actually learned their names yet. Now knowing their names, Sarissa Kinesis beams with excitement as she greets Elk and Gumbo. She declares that their meeting was fate and encourages them to do their best together as a team. Feeling slightly overwhelmed by Sarissa's energy, Elk Kinesis stammers a polite response. Beside him, Gumbo remains silent, looking completely drained. The group arrives at the reception area, where they are met with a massive crowd of freshman applicants. As they wait in the long line, they discuss the upcoming tournament, noting that while fighting should be optional for the first term, the sheer number of applicants suggests that the students in the skill department this year are incredibly confident in their own abilities. Gumbo shouts with absolute confidence, declaring that Team Gumbo will be the one standing at the top of the podium, while Elk looks on with a bewildered expression. Feeling embarrassed by Gumbo's sudden and loud outburst, Elk Kinesis asks him why he had to rile everyone up like that. Nearby, another student reacts to the scene, calling for someone named Finn to tell Gumbo off. A student calls out to Gumbo, complimenting his impressive muscles and asking if he'll be competing in the individual matches. Elk watches the interaction in silence as Gumbo confidently replies that he is applying for the team battles instead, wishing the other student luck with their own matches. As Elk Kinesis examines his papers, he recalls the observation that the students in the skill department this year seem to have an exceptionally high opinion of their own abilities. As he reflects on the competitive atmosphere, Elk wonders if his siblings will also be participating in the tournament this year. Elk reflects on the situation, deciding that this tournament will be the perfect stage for his revenge. He hopes to keep his siblings out of the matter, as they have no place in his plans. Meanwhile, Gumbo and Finn have officially submitted their application for the team battles. Lost in his thoughts about the tournament and his revenge, Elk accidentally bumps into another student. Startled by the collision, he quickly offers a brief apology. Elk Kinesis realizes that the student he just bumped into is the same person who spoke at the entrance ceremony. As he offers his thanks, Marin simply smiles and tells him not to worry about it. Marin notices the look on Elk's face and asks if he's wondering why someone like him is there. Caught off guard, Elk quickly denies it. Marin suddenly becomes very excited, explaining to Elk that he has always wanted to experience waiting in a long queue to turn in applications. He reveals that back home, his butlers and servants always did everything for him, making this a novel experience. Marin notices that Elk Kinesis is holding 2 application forms and asks if he intends to compete in the individual matches as well. Elk simply responds with a brief "I see." Elk Kinesis asks Marin if he is applying for the same matches, and Marin enthusiastically confirms that he is. Marin asks Elk how his team is looking. Elk reflects on his situation, admitting that while their teamwork might not be perfect, they do share a common goal. Elk Kinesis simply states that their shared objective is victory. Marin, looking at him with a confident smirk, asks what exactly that goal entails. Marin notices the intensity in Elk's eyes when he mentions victory, remarking that his team must be a great one. Suddenly, a staff member calls for the next person in line, and Marin realizes it's finally his turn to move forward. A close-up of a hand resting on a surface accompanies a thoughtful "but," while Elk Kinesis and other Avon continue to wait their turn at the reception desk. Elk thinks to himself, confident in his team's power. He knows that with the greatest swordsman and magician by his side, his team is more than enough to take on anyone, including Marin's. Marin looks back with a confident smile and a wave, expressing genuine excitement for the challenges ahead. They specifically mention looking forward to the moment their team faces off against Elk Kinesis in the tournament. Elk Kinesis leans against the wall for a moment, before walking down the hallway. He remains silent, his expression pensive as he reflects on the upcoming confrontation. Walking away from the crowd, Elk Kinesis thinks to himself, wondering if his teammates are still busy with their applications. While lost in his thoughts, Elk Kinesis is interrupted. When Mary calls out to him, she waves goodbye as she departs with her friends, leaving Elk momentarily surprised as he acknowledges her. Mary asks Elk Kinesis if he is applying for the tournament as well. Elk confirms that he is, though only for the individual matches. Mary shares that she also turned down the team matches, as she wants to see how far she can go relying solely on her sword. Yato steps in between Mary and Elk Kinesis, firmly telling them to cut it out. Yato identifies herself as Shikiba Yato, and points out that Mary is in her class. Mary looks surprised, struggling to recall who Yato is. Yato recalls something about Mary, questioning if she is the one who mentioned being a sword wielder. Mary confirms it with a blunt response, asking why Yato is bringing it up. Yato leans in close to Mary, scrutinizing her. With a blunt expression, she tells her, "You don't smell like one," leaving Mary completely stunned. Yato continues her provocation, coldly stating that she doesn't smell any blood on Mary. She claims that Mary has never killed anyone or even faced real danger in her life. Shocked and offended, Mary snaps back, demanding to know what on earth Yato is talking about. With a cold and piercing gaze, Yato tells Mary that she should go rescind her application immediately. She warns her bluntly that fighting with a sword swung around for fun will only lead to her immediate death. Indignant at Yato's cold assessment, Mary snaps and attempts to draw her sword, challenging Yato to a fight right then and there. However, before she can unsheath her blade, Elk Kinesis grabs her wrist, firmly telling her to drop it and reminding her that they are in a public place with too many witnesses. Mary sighs and lets go of her weapon, reluctantly agreeing to Elk's request, though she still seems to have something on her mind. Mary glares with a look of fierce determination, thinking to herself that she will prove whether her sword is just for show once the tournament begins. Yato calls out to Elk, stating that she looks forward to crossing swords with him. As she walks away, she quietly wonders if they will actually face each other. Left alone with Mary, Elk sighs in disbelief, wondering why Yato singled him out for a duel. Elk tells Mary not to let Yato's cheap taunts get to her. Meanwhile, as he clenches his fist, he realizes that Yato doesn't even consider him a worthy opponent. Just as Elk is lost in his thoughts, Mary suddenly turns and walks away without a word, leaving him shouting in confusion. As Yato and Mary walk away, Elk watches them with a thoughtful expression. He reflects on their behavior, realizing that he isn't the only one participating in this year's tournament with ulterior motives. Luca approaches the group with a bright smile, apologizing for the delay. He cheerfully announces that he has already turned in the application for the team matches. Sarissa and Roshuo Kinesis appear, standing side by side with a cold and confident demeanor. Sarissa Kinesis tells Prince Elwood that he didn't need to trouble himself, as she could have sent her friends instead. Elwood responds with a smile, insisting that he is just like any other student at the academy. Prince Elwood continues his conversation, noting that he happened to meet an interesting and decent freshman while he was there. Prince Elwood maintains a calm smile as someone reacts with surprise, questioning who could have possibly caught the eye of the renowned three-skilled genius prince. Prince Elwood pauses for a moment, humming thoughtfully. Then he breaks into a bright smile and confirms with a cheerful yup. Prince Elwood proudly presents the members of his team, boasting about having Roshuo, the genius sword saint of Deo, and his gifted sister, the magic saint Sarissa, by his side. Prince Elwood spreads his arms wide with a smug expression, adding himself to the list of powerhouses. With such a formidable team by his side, he is certain that victory is as good as theirs. Meanwhile, in the training area, a group of Avon gossip about some strange individuals they've spotted. One of them sternly reminds the others that the tournament is fast approaching, and they cannot afford to slack off on their training. A girl in combat gear delivers a precise and powerful kick straight to the chest of a muscular man in armor. After the impact, the man admits the strike was right on the money. He looks down at her footwear, wondering if those thick-soled boots are one of her weapons and noting that she seems to have dabbled in martial arts. Mira continues her attack, confidently explaining that she grew up fighting. Kai, though feeling the pressure, remains composed and tells her that while her form is good, he only needs one opening to win. With a sudden burst of power, Kai launches a heavy strike at Mira. Just as Kai and Mira's clash reaches a peak, a hand suddenly shoots up between them. "Hold it!" a voice commands, forcing the two fighters to halt their assault in surprise. Kinesis speaks up, reminding Kai and Mira that this is just a training match and that other students are watching, so there is no need to reveal everything now. Kai quickly concedes, but then looks at Elk with a puzzled expression, asking where his combat gear is. Elk looks at his companions and admits that their combat gear seems a bit strange. Surprised by his ignorance, Kai explains that they wear outfits tailored to their specific skills, noting that his own gear is lightweight because his body itself becomes armor. Mira adds that her gloves and boots are custom-made to withstand the intensity of her fighting style. Elk casually admits that he doesn't have any specialized combat gear, leaving Kai bewildered. When Kai urgently asks what he plans to wear for the tournament, Elk simply replies that he'll wear something easy to move in. Kai is completely baffled, questioning if Elk is seriously planning to stand on the winner's podium, wearing nothing but a t-shirt and track pants. Elk simply shrugs it off, noting that it's too late to change and he can't use gear he doesn't have. Just then, someone calls out to him. A newcomer suddenly arrives, panting heavily after searching for Elk. Having been told by Mary that he would be here, they urgently interrupt the group to deliver an important message. Still catching her breath, the girl nervously speaks up, telling Elk that there is a favor she would like to ask of him. The chapter concludes with a credit screen, acknowledging the team behind the translation and production. The scene transitions to a vast, abstract hall filled with geometric structures. High above on a tiered platform, a mysterious figure speaks, announcing that the wait is over and it is time to begin. With a booming voice that echoes through the massive hall, Mika announces the start of the opening ceremony. With the opening ceremony officially underway, the attention of the crowd shifts toward a distinguished elderly man as he steps forward to deliver his opening speech. Soren clears his throat to get the crowd's attention and begins his address, bluntly stating that he dislikes long speeches and will keep things simple. Soren finishes his remarks with a reassuring smile, telling the students not to worry about injuries because Dr. Nightingale is with them. After declaring that is all, another man steps forward to announce the next part of the ceremony as mentioned in the headmaster's speech. Following his remarks, Soren introduces the tournament's chief medical officer. He presents Dr. Nightingale, the Academy's health doctor, and one of the prestigious 5 stars to the gathered crowd. The crowd buzzes with excitement as the Avon whisper to one another, shocked that the chief medical officer is one of the legendary 5 stars with strength skills. Dr. Nightingale stands calmly at the podium, her expression stoic and composed. Avon looks on, recalling the rumors of her incredible skills and confirming her prestigious position as one of the 5 stars. Following the headmaster's introduction, Dr. Nightingale assures the gathered students that any injury, even death, can be healed within a day. The Avens are left stunned, their faces filled with disbelief as Dr. Nightingale continues her address. Dr. Nightingale continues her address, telling the new students that they can fight to their heart's content. She coldly adds that this allows them to learn from the experiences of death, pain, and despair. Having delivered her chilling message about pain and despair, Dr. Nightingale leaves the podium. Soren meets her, praising her for the work she has done. Nightingale questions the headmaster, Soren, asking if her words were too harsh for the students, both those present in the main hall and those in the waiting rooms. Soren calmly replies that they were appropriate, believing the shock helped the new students brace themselves for the challenges ahead. In the waiting room, a spiky-haired man fumes in frustration, cursing the fact that they have to watch the opening ceremony through a screen. His teammate, a Yuri, calmly reminds him that only the top-tier teams from noble backgrounds are allowed to attend in person, noting that with over 100 teams participating, such a restriction is only natural. In the waiting room, a short-haired girl assures Rian that their companion will arrive soon. As Rian wonders if it is finally time, a hooded figure suddenly appears behind them, addressing the two. The Elkinesis speaks up, apologizing to Rin and Ryan for keeping them waiting. Rin is immediately impressed by Elk's gear, while Rian tells him that as long as he made it in time, he has no complaints. Elk apologizes, explaining that final adjustments took longer than expected, before suddenly announcing that he has a favor to ask of his teammates. Emma suddenly appears, breathless and flustered. Elk is surprised to see her and asks what is wrong. Emma explains that after hearing from Mary that Elk is participating in the tournament, she realized he might lack a proper combat outfit. Blushing with determination, she offers to use her sewing skill to make one for him. Elk is thrilled by Emma's offer and eagerly asks her to make his battle outfit, declaring that he'll do whatever it takes to help. Emma is caught off guard by his intensity. Meanwhile, Ryan jokingly asks if he should help with measurements, prompting a flustered Rin to shout that Elk doesn't need to strip right then and there. Emma asks Elk how the new outfit fits. Now dressed in the sleek hooded gear, Elk flexes his arm and praises the outfit, noting that it feels sturdy yet lightweight and doesn't hinder his movement. Emma looks on, relieved and happy with his positive reaction. Proudly, Emma explains that the outfit's exceptional quality comes from a special fiber used in martial arts uniforms, which she had shipped from her homeland, the martial nation of Bard. She credits Finneson for preparing the fabric, while Rin enthusiastically chimes in. Emma beams with joy as she explains that she managed to get some extra materials from her family's dojo, feeling glad that they were useful for Elk's battle outfit. Emma asks Elkson to stretch both of his arms out to test the mobility of the new outfit. Elk complies, extending his arms wide to check if the fit is correct. As Elk stretches his arm out to test the fit, the sudden and powerful movement catches Emma completely off guard, leaving her shocked. As Elk examines his gear, he discovers a small concealed weapon, wondering if it is a hidden blade. Emma cheerfully explains that the blade was a gift from Gumbo, while Kai proudly declares that when it comes to steel, the Log Kingdom is second to none. Kai proudly explains that the blade is forged from the highest quality iron, boasting that cheap knockoffs wouldn't even be able to scratch it, while Elk looks on. Elk looks closely at the mask and the hidden blade, feeling a disconnect between the aggressive, functional design and Emma's usual style. Emma enthusiastically explains that while she was searching the library for a mobile combat outfit, a person with sleek black hair and a sword suggested she look into the assassin class from the Yamato Kingdom. Elk listens, simply responding that he understands. Emma looks at Elk with a warm, determined smile. She honestly admits that she didn't want him to carry anything dangerous, but she has decided to do everything she can to help him, leaving no room for regrets. Emma explains the practical reason for the mask, warning Elk Kinesis that if too many people see his face, they might recognize him from the Dio Kingdom. Elk reflects on Emma's kindness, touched that she considered every single detail of his clothing. Meanwhile, the others in the room chime in, reminding him that they helped out as well. Nick greets Elk with a smile, noting that his new combat outfit came together without a hitch. Elk simply acknowledges them, calling out their names, Nick and Mary. Mary proudly mentions that she kept the costs for the outfit within budget, reminding them that she is an heir to the Merchant Guild. She also credits Nick for helping her work out the material costs. Despite their own help, Nick and Mary admit that Emma was the one who truly worked the hardest on the outfit. Elk, looking at her, agrees with a soft, appreciative tone. Emma smiles shyly and modestly brushes off the praise, stating that she simply did what she truly wanted to do, with bright, happy expressions. Elk Kinesis and Nick sincerely thank Emma for the effort and care she put into his new outfit, moved to tears. Emma covers her face and softly tells Elk that she should be the one thanking him, expressing her happiness at finally being able to return the favor. As Emma continues to cry from emotion, Mary and Rin tease Elk, calling him the worst and a heartbreaker. Kai joins in, wondering why Elk made her cry, while a bewildered Elk shouts back, wondering how this is his fault. Emma gently wipes away a tear with a warm, happy smile, explaining that she is crying out of joy and feeling truly grateful for the wonderful friends by her side. Emma beams with happiness, exclaiming how glad she is to have come to the academy. Elk Kinesis looks at her with a gentle expression and agrees, feeling the same way. Nick calls out to the group, urgently alerting the 3 team members that they need to pay attention as the rules for the flag battle are about to be explained. Elk Kinesis remains attentive as an announcement echoes through the hall. Before the rules of the flag battle are explained, the representative team is called upon to make their vow. As the announcement continues, Elwood Storm Gallatin, Roshuo Kinesis, and Sarissa Kinesis are called to step forward as the representative team. Standing before the crowd, the representative team concludes their vow, declaring that their goal is their first priority. Standing at the podium, Elwood confidently proclaims to the assembly that he and his teammates will fight with honor and integrity. Sarissa and Roshuo Kinesis maintain their confident expressions as they bring their vow to a close, pledging their resolve until the very end. While the representative team makes their grand declaration, Elk Kinesis watches them with a calm, unreadable expression, hidden beneath his hood and mask. Watching from the crowd, Elk Kinesis repeats the words honor and integrity with a cold, mocking tone. He finds it impossible to take their vow seriously, knowing the true nature of the 2 people standing behind the leader. Elwood looks at the hooded figure with a suspicious gaze, sensing an unsettling presence. He speaks up, noting that something feels off about him. The representative team is fully prepared. Sia proudly boasts that they have their battle gear and are ready to go, before casting a playful look and asking if anyone is feeling nervous. Saya puts her arm around Elk Kinesis, flashing a confident smile as she declares that winning is the only thing left to do, seeking agreement from those around her. With the announcement of the rules finally approaching, Elk Kinesis lets out a weary sigh. He realizes that, in this environment, his teammates are the only ones he can truly rely on. His expression turns determined as he reminds himself that the 3 of them share one singular goal: victory. The announcer takes the stage to explain the rules for the upcoming flag battle. However, as he begins to speak, Gumbo catches sight of him and is struck by a sudden realization. Shakuriki starts to announce that the rules are simple, though he seems a bit hesitant. At the same time, Gumbo realizes that the person on the platform is actually Shakuriki-sensei. Shakuriki continues his explanation, gesturing as he clarifies the objective of the competition. He informs the students that each team will be given a flag, and their ultimate goal is to capture the flags of the other teams. Shakuriki continues detailing the rules, announcing that teams have a 7-hour time limit to collect 3 flags to earn their place in the final round. Shakuriki continues the explanation, clarifying that flags can only be seized if an opponent is incapacitated or unconscious. He adds that the battle will split the participants into 2 groups, those who successfully capture flags to move forward, and those who are eliminated and sent to the waiting room after losing their flags. Shakuriki pauses for a moment before adding one last detail to the rules. Flags can also be taken from opponents who have already fallen. Shakuriki wraps up the briefing, telling the students to proceed to the battle arena once the time comes. Kai, Yuna, and Rin listen attentively as the final instructions are given. Wearing his hooded cloak, Elk Kinesis casually manipulates small objects with his telekinesis, noting that everyone seems ready for the upcoming battle. He then turns his attention to Nick. Nick enthusiastically wishes Elk and his teammates good luck, mentioning that he and Mary will be cheering them on. Mary dismisses her brother's comment with a slight annoyance. Meanwhile, as the team stands together, Miras is struck by Elk's aura, remarking on what a strong ally he is. Myra stares in confusion, wondering why Gumbo is there. Gumbo maintains a stern expression, standing silently alongside Elk. Gumbo bows his head and suddenly apologizes to the group. Nina looks on with a puzzled expression, wondering if this is related to something that happened in the past, while Nick is completely caught off guard by Gumbo's sudden behavior. Gumbo continues his heartfelt apology, admitting that his actions when they first met were disgraceful. With a humble tone, he confesses that he doesn't expect them to forgive him, but he still feels the need to express his regret. Moved by the atmosphere, Nina also drops to the ground in a deep bow. She earnestly asks for the chance to apologize, claiming that she would have no right to accept their support if she didn't. Stunned by the unexpected turn of events, Elk Kinesis looks on in disbelief as Gumbo offers his heartfelt apology. Nina tells Gumbo to raise his head, warmly accepting him as a friend since he is a friend of Elk. Gumbo smiles, simply replying that supporting a friend is only natural. Gumbo softly says thank you, but Nina is left in shock. She can't believe that Gumbo is actually bowing his head to someone. Confused by the sudden shift in atmosphere, she wonders what just happened and turns her gaze toward Elk. Elk Kinesis gazes off thoughtfully, lost in his own reflections. He wonders if he is truly content with the current state of things, questioning how he can fight alongside comrades and be cheered on by friends while still clinging to his singular desire for revenge. Without saying a word, Elk Kinesis and his group begin to move, leaving the waiting area behind as they head toward their next destination. Nina looks toward her companions, her voice trembling slightly as she begins to address everyone. The scene abruptly shifts to Yuna, who awakens in a strange open field. Disoriented and shocked, she looks around in confusion and notices a mysterious metallic band fastened to her arm, questioning where she is and what the object is. Kai and Rin suddenly appear, calling out to Elk Kinesis with excitement. Surprised by their sudden arrival, Elk looks at them and wonders if they had been nearby the whole time. Looking on with a determined gaze, Elk reflects on the situation. He realizes the purpose of their arrival and the significance of the flag, concluding that everything has finally begun. The setting is revealed to be the Great Sea of Trees, a forest-type dungeon known as Philos Forest. This expansive wilderness is the designated arena for the first round of the martial arts tournament, the Flag Battle. As the event commences, Yuna stands overlooking the vast terrain. Standing in the forest, Kai asks the group about their strategy, suggesting they just find an enemy team and crush them. However, Rin immediately disagrees, arguing that there is no point in rushing into battle without a plan. As his teammates argue over the plan, Elk Kinesis remains silent, lost in thought. He contemplates whether to disclose his real objective, but worries that the truth might only confuse them during such a crucial match. Elk Kinesis remains deep in thought. He decides that if they encounter Roshu and Sarisa in a team battle, he will have no choice but to be honest with Kai and Rin about his real goals. Just as Elk Kinesis is lost in thought, an unexpected attack strikes. Sharp projectiles whistle through the air, leaving Kai and Rin wide-eyed in shock, while Elk remains focused amidst the sudden danger. Elk Kinesis activates his acceleration to intercept the projectiles, but he is too late to save everyone. Rin lets out a cry of pain as a sharp projectile pierces her. Frustrated and shocked, Elk curses himself for failing to sense the attack before it struck. Elk rushes to Rin's side, worriedly asking if she is okay. Despite being struck, Rin shouts for Elk to stop hesitating and use his telekinesis. Akai Sai steps in front of them, activating his steelification skill to harden his body and absorb the impact of the projectiles to shield his teammates. Elk narrows his eyes, realizing the intent behind the sudden assault. Going straight for our leader, huh? He muses with a sharp gaze. You've got some guts! Rin analyzes the situation, noting that the enemy must possess a special skill to be able to shoot from such a distance. Yuna agrees, stating that their first priority is to locate the attacker. From a hidden position, Yuna watches the scene unfold, plagued by inner conflict and guilt as she realizes her actions caused Rin to get hurt. Meanwhile, an unknown figure monitors the situation through a magical device, urging patience and asking about the progress of the appraisal. Yuna and her small companion stay concealed among the trees, silently watching the scene unfold from their hidden perch. Cian confirms they have the group in sight. Using a specialized device, Cian appraises the huge man, identifying his skill as steelification at level 19 and noting that it has not yet evolved. The light-haired young man confidently declares that he will take care of the others, while the scouts are distracted. He looks forward to seeing the true power of the so-called telekinesis, certain that victory belongs to his team. As the tension builds in the forest, the history of skills is revealed. In the past, a skill was simply a means to strengthen the physical body, but as humanity evolved, these abilities branched out into thousands of different variations. Skills are further categorized into three main sections: rank, class, and level. The explanation continues with the first category. Ranks range from G to S, with the most powerful individuals a group known as the 5 stars classified as S rank. The focus shifts to a formal environment, where Zane looks on thoughtfully, while other officials stand before a large display, hinting at the higher authorities governing the world's skill system. The explanation continues with the second category, class. There are 4 primary skill classes, including the magic skill, which allows a user to manifest their own mana into various elements. The explanation of the skill system continues, introducing the next class, weapon skill. This class grants the user the ability to enhance their weapons and wield them with superior proficiency in combat. To illustrate the power of a weapon skill, a warrior is shown striking a rock wall, causing it to shatter into pieces upon impact. Following the explanation of weapon skills, the narrative introduces the body strengthening skill, which is the ability to modify and strengthen the physical properties of one's own body. Akai confidently deflects an attack, mocking its simplicity and claiming he barely needs to move to avoid it. However, a Emma nearby warns him against his arrogance, shouting that the next attack is already on its way. Kai suddenly activates his acceleration skill, moving with such blinding speed that he catches his opponent completely off guard. Mira watches in disbelief, shocked that he seems to be reading her every movement. As the explanation of the skill system reaches its conclusion, the final class is introduced. In a display of absolute dominance, Kai's overwhelming speed and power leave Mira completely defeated and sent flying across the field. The explanation continues, stating that this final class of skills is fundamentally different from the other three. In the background, Kai remains standing tall, having completely overpowered Mira. The final category is revealed to be the unique skill. Elk Kinesis, wearing his cloak and mask, approaches the exhausted Kai and Mira, asking if they are all right. Grateful for his intervention, they acknowledge that Elk has saved them. Looking around at the towering trees and thick vines, Kai clicks his tongue in annoyance. He remarks that the dense forest is a real pain, as it acts as natural camouflage for the enemy team, making it difficult to track their movements. Elk Kinesis dismisses the concern, utilizing his superior sensing ability to scan the area. Through his mental visualization, he confirms that despite the dense forest, there is only one person nearby. Mira suddenly feels an unsettling presence. Relying on her own skill, she realizes that the feeling is identical to the thorn attack they encountered earlier, leading her to believe the enemy is lurking nearby. Suddenly, a massive spike crashes violently into the ground right beside them. As the narrative explains that skills can evolve and gain new abilities upon reaching their level cap, Kai curses the enemy, wondering if they have evolved their skill. Mira looks on in alarm, realizing that these attacks are no longer the same thorns they encountered earlier. As the massive spike erupts, Elk Kinesis remains calm, questioning if the attack was a calculated move. He suspects the masked enemy intentionally triggered the explosion to create a smokescreen and conceal their movements. Elk Kinesis carefully analyzes the situation, noting that the masked enemy is the strongest of the group and highly aware of the surroundings. While acknowledging he needs time for his skill's cooldown to reset, he predicts that the enemy will likely switch to an offensive approach if they are alone. Just as he reaches this conclusion, a sharp attack suddenly slashes through a nearby tree. An enemy scout leaps swiftly through the canopy, viewing Elk's teammates as mere burdens. He believes that because Elk is forced to cover for them, he can launch attacks with complete freedom and convenience. The scene shifts away from the forest to a city setting. Dressed in his school uniform, Elk Kinesis looks surprised as he asks if the person he is meant to meet is indeed him, while a mysterious voice simply responds with a questioning "so?" While sitting at the cafe, and explains that Rin's skills will make her a key player in their team's strategy. Elk Kinesis, appearing skeptical, sarcastically addresses her as Miss Key Player and asks what amazing skill she possesses. Rin explains that her skill allows her to see every single ability a person possesses by looking through a small object. Elk Kinesis is skeptical, questioning why she isn't using a shrine for appraisals, while Avon suggests they might need someone more battle-oriented. However, when Rin uses her power on Elk, she is stunned to see he is listed as Rudra from Class F, possessing a skill called Needle that has reached level 28 and evolved. Elk Kinesis is visibly annoyed, questioning Rin's lack of manners for shouting out his skill level and class so openly. While Rin remains unfazed, Avon emphasizes the importance of skill secrecy, noting that having this information will allow them to avoid dangerous opponents and target those they can easily counter in the tournament. Rin explains that with her ability, they can save a vast amount of time on scouting, allowing them to control the flow of every match. By pinpointing the blind spots of their enemies, she ensures they will always hold the upper hand. The scene shifts back to the forest, where Elk Kinesis calmly launches a massive log with his telekinesis, slamming it violently into a nearby tree. The object impacts the tree with overwhelming power, sending a violent shockwave of dust and splinters into the air. The sheer force of the blow rips through the massive trunk, leaving it utterly destroyed. Elk Kinesis looks on with a composed expression, reading the desperation and irritation in his opponent's minds. He realizes they launched a frantic attack in a futile attempt to hit him. Noticing the objects scattered around, he recognizes them as his own needles and scoffs at the fact that, despite using them, they completely missed their mark. Just as Elk Kinesis mocks the missed mark, a girl suddenly leaps through the air, using the scattered needles as footholds to close the distance instantly. She lunges at him with a confident smile, shouting that she has him now, leaving Elk shocked by her unexpected and resourceful strategy. Kira lunges forward with intense determination, shouting that they will win. Elk Kinesis is momentarily surprised as she closes the gap for a decisive strike. The scene shifts to Yuna, Finn, and Gumbo hiding in the forest. Finn checks on Gumbo's condition, and they thank Yuna for covering them. Yuna warns that they cannot hide forever, but she reassures them that her skill is currently preventing the enemy team from attacking, allowing her to plan the right moment for a counteroffensive. Finn firmly tells Yuna that she shouldn't feel guilty, insisting that the wound isn't her fault. With a determined expression, Finn urges Yuna to rely on them, reminding her that they are a team and will stand together even if they lose. Finn places a hand on Yuna's shoulder, firmly reminding her that they are a team of 3 and that she shouldn't carry the entire burden alone. She encourages Yuna to rely on them more often as their leader. As Yuna begins to accept this, Gumbo interrupts with a confident smile, announcing that he has an interesting plan to secure their victory. Though it will require the full strength of both his teammates, determined to win, Finn leaps into action, intending to capitalize on Gumbo's plan and the opening Elk provided. However, her momentum is suddenly halted as the thorns she was using as footholds shift unexpectedly, leaving her struggling. Elk looks on with a confident smirk, mocking her for playing right into his hands by spreading his needles out for him. Elk remains composed as he explains his mission to find a physical body. With a calculated move, he sends Finn flying through the forest, forcing her right into the view of his ally. Finn can only scream his name in shock as she is thrown helplessly through the air. With a single powerful motion, Elk Kinesis launches Finn violently. Finn screams in shock as she is sent flying by the sheer force of his telekinesis. The scene shifts to the martial arts tournament's emergency medical tent. Amidst the urgency, the head nurse is called to examine the wounded, though she observes that some of the injuries are simple enough to be handled with normal treatment rather than specialized skill-based healing. The head nurse rushes to the patients, but she is met with a gruesome sight. The injured participants are in terrible shape, their bodies riddled with multiple stab wounds, and some have even suffered the loss of their fingers and severe damage to their limbs. While a nearby staff member suggests that the injuries must have come from a brutal fight, the head nurse looks on in shock, realizing that something far more sinister is at play, even as she confirms that the victims are still clinging to life. Looking at the blood-soaked beds, the head nurse realizes the terrifying precision of the attacker. Whoever did this deliberately avoided fatal spots, making it clear that this wasn't a battle, but a cruel act of torture. Dane slowly wakes up in the medical tent, his face covered in blood and sweat, trembling with fear. He can only mutter about the terrifying person who did this to him. Terrified and struggling, Dane tries to recount the brutality of the attack, mentioning how the assailant tore his comrades apart. Seeing his critical state, the head nurse urgently tells him to stop speaking and orders that he be taken to the treatment room immediately. In a haunting flashback, Dane remembers the cold cruelty of his attacker. Despite their desperate pleas for forgiveness and offering him the flag, Elk Kinesis only laughed, declaring that he didn't care about the objective, only wanted to see them suffer. The flashback continues, showing Elk Kinesis' cold indifference as he tosses the tournament flag aside and brutally severs Dane's arm and fingers, leaving him in a state of absolute horror. Returning to the present, the head nurse assesses Dane's condition as he lies on a stretcher. She concludes that if his injuries are limited to what she has seen, the healing team should be able to recover him. The head nurse and Neri express their shock, unable to believe that a freshman could be so cruel. While they acknowledge that killing is permitted in the tournament, they argue that the event is meant for training to improve combat skills, not for the sadistic pleasure of beating someone up one-sidedly just for fun. A shot of the abandoned tournament flag lying on the ground in the forest. The sheer sadism of the attack leads to a chilling realization. He is a monster wearing human skin. The scene shifts to a lavish setting, where an attendant addresses Sarissa Kinesis as Your Highness, offering her a drink. Sarissa calmly requests some tea, and the attendant promptly agrees to fetch it for her. Sarissa Kinesis reveals her prestigious magic saint, skill known as Skill Rental, an ability that grants her access to the skills of anyone who holds affection for her. As Kian looks on in awe at the genius of the Kinesis family, Sarissa casually employs the power for a mundane task, noting that a few borrowed skills are more than enough to brew the perfect cup of tea. With a simple order, Sarissa Kinesis orchestrates a series of rented skills to brew her tea. She teleports the equipment, manipulates the liquid, and ignites the fire, treating these powerful abilities as mere tools for her own convenience. Sarissa Kinesis presents the tea to the man, addressing him as Your Highness. The man notes that using 3 different skills just to brew tea makes for a truly luxurious tea time. Sarissa beams with joy, feeling honored that her simple triple combo earned her such praise. While continuing her conversation with the high-ranking man, Sarissa Kinesis mentions that her brother had set off on his own to seize another team's flag. Despite his confidence, she can't help but wonder if he is doing all right. Jin looks on with a composed expression, reassuring Sarissa that her brother will be perfectly fine regardless of the other team's strength. Jin tells Sarissa not to worry, but as they enjoy their tea, A sudden rustle from the surrounding foliage puts Sarissa on high alert. The rustling in the bushes is revealed to be Roshuo Kinesis. He approaches Sarissa and Jin with a sheepish smile, admitting that the last team ran away faster than he expected, leaving him unable to secure their flag. Jin tells Roshuo that while he is an important teammate, senseless violence is something he cannot tolerate. Confused, Roshuo reminds him that the opposing team actually escaped. Sarissa giggles, teasing her brother by saying, "He's not exactly one to talk." Sarissa points out the obvious, questioning how Roshuo can be so confused when he is standing right there, drenched in blood. Roshuo looks down at his hands, which are heavily drenched in blood. After a moment of stunned silence, he lets out a soft, realization-filled sigh. Roshuo Kinesis wears a slight smirk on his face, finally understanding the state of things. "So that's how it is," he murmurs calmly. Roshuo Kinesis approaches the table, noting how casually Jin and Sarissa are enjoying their tea. He asks Sarissa to brew him a cup, but she bluntly refuses, telling him to change out of his filthy, blood-covered clothes first. Unfazed, Roshuo simply tells her he'll leave it to her usual skill. Yuna exclaims with confidence as she looks down at the defeated Elk Kinesis. With Elk lying unconscious on the grass, she believes that her action should now do the trick. Yuna looks down at the defeated Elk Kinesis, remarking that it is no surprise he was knocked out after taking such a hit. When she casually adds that she was actually holding back, Rin reacts with utter disbelief at the level of Yuna's power. Kai suddenly shifts the conversation, asking if they remember what the Academy's head nurse said during the opening ceremony. Confused by the sudden change in topic, Rin asks if he is referring to Nurse Nightingale. Recalling the head nurse's words, Yuna remembers the claim that any injury, even death, can be healed within a day. To her, this means one thing: it is perfectly acceptable to kill people during the tournament. Kai agrees and shares his plan, noting that if opponents are currently unconscious or too injured to move, any attempt by their teammates to save them would put both teams back on equal footing. Kai admits that his proposed method isn't exactly the cleanest, but he believes it's necessary to act quickly before the rest of the opponent's team can strike back. Despite the ruthless strategy, Yuna firmly states that she won't kill him. Yuna reflects on the situation, questioning if she should kill simply because it is allowed to her. Taking a life for something so trivial is unacceptable. Yuna's expression becomes contemplative as she thinks of those who view life so cheaply, muttering to herself, "Just like them." Rin looks at Yuna with a smirk, commenting that their leader is a softie through and through. Yuna, however, remains resolute, stating that she doesn't want to kill, nor does she want her teammates to do so. Kai gives a thumbs up with a wide grin, exclaiming that Elk's kindness is exactly what makes him who he is. Kai exclaims that he knew Yuna would react that way. Overcome with emotion, he clings to her, shouting that he simply wanted to reaffirm their team's bond. Yuna, caught off guard by his sudden outburst, begins to wonder if Kai had been testing her from the very beginning. Kai asks if he can test his teammate's strength. However, Elk Kinesis stops him, insisting that they first listen to the truth about the tragedy he endured and his true motivation for fighting: revenge. Leaves drift slowly through the air as a heavy silence settles over the forest clearing. Elk Kinesis looks on with a solemn, determined expression, while Kai and Yuna stand by, waiting in anticipation for the revelation he is about to share. Just as Elk is about to speak, he suddenly stops, sensing something unusual. Finn looks at him, confused by the sudden silence, while Kai notices something odd: leaves are falling around them, even though there is no wind. Sensing an immediate threat, Elk Kinesis urgently screams for his teammates to get away from the area, just as a series of sudden explosions erupt around them. A massive explosion rips through the clearing as the fallen leaves ignite. Elk Kinesis narrowly avoids the blast by using his telekinesis to propel himself to safety. As he lands, he realizes the severity of the attack and frantically wonders if Gumbo and Finn were able to escape in time. Relieved, Elk Kinesis realizes that the other two managed to use their skills to block the blast, ensuring their safety. With the initial blast neutralized, Elk Kinesis and Kai brace themselves, their expressions focused and determined as they prepare for the next move of their unseen enemy. Elk Kinesis narrows his eyes, his expression turning cold and determined as he locks onto the source of the attack. The source of the sudden attack is revealed. The hidden enemy possesses the explosion skill, a simple and straightforward ability that causes anything the user touches with their hand to explode. A close-up reveals the mysterious attacker, Yuna, her face partially concealed by a mask as she prepares her next move. The explanation of the skill concludes, demonstrating the terrifying nature of the explosion ability. Anything the user touches instantly turns into a bomb. Yuna coldly reveals the devastating result of her power, claiming that their leader has been blown to bits. Elk and Finn are left frozen in horror at the revelation. Finn lets out a desperate scream, calling Elk's name as he is engulfed by the blast. Kai stands frozen in shock, watching as their leader is seemingly torn apart by the devastating power of the explosion skill. About 15 minutes have passed since the sudden bombing. A short-haired man asks if the analysis of the masked attacker is finished. The woman with glasses asks for a little more time, explaining that by meeting specific conditions, her skill allows her to fully grasp the target's skill level, abilities, and evolution. Eri finishes her analysis, her expression shifting as she finally grasps the truth about the target's power. I see, she murmurs, standing within the void of her skill's visualization. Eri suddenly finds herself in a desolate, void-like expanse, confused. She looks around the dark landscape, wondering where she is. She reflects on the abilities of the target she analyzed, noting that none of them should possess a power like this. As she stares at the shimmering black sea surrounding her, she realizes that this phenomenon isn't the result of an enemy's skill. Looking closer at the dark void, Ari realizes that what she thought was black water is actually a dense mass of numbers. She concludes that it is raw data, an overwhelming volume of information about the masked man's skill that had been too much for her to process. The sheer volume of information becomes too much for Ari to handle, pushing her mind to its absolute limit. In that moment of mental strain, a sudden vision flashes before her, revealing a glimpse of the man behind the mask. The vision reveals the truth, showing the Ren's real appearance, a cold, powerful figure standing over the fallen, cloaked form. Ari is completely stunned, her eyes wide with shock and sweat beading on her face, as she struggles to process the overwhelming revelation she just witnessed. A light-haired woman frantically shakes Ari, shouting for her to get a grip. However, Ari remains unresponsive, her glasses cracked from the overwhelming pressure of the data she processed, leaving her completely unconscious. Sarah is in a state of total distress, her mind racing with desperation. She questions if they should retreat, but quickly dismisses the thought, feeling the weight of responsibility for putting their allies in danger. Amidst her internal turmoil, Ari faintly mumbles, showing the first signs of waking up. Amidst Sierra's panic, Ari faintly speaks, revealing the truth she uncovered from the overwhelming Datha skill possessed by the masked man is telekinesis. Still struggling to regain full consciousness, Ari tries to assess the enemy's power level, only to find that it is beyond her ability to evaluate. Ari reflects on the immense power that was too great for her to fully perceive. Yet she insists there is one thing she knows for certain. At the same time, Sarah's voice rings out, demanding that she shut up and listen. A symbolic image of a chessboard appears, dominated by a massive king piece. The grim reality is clear. As long as he remains on the board, victory is impossible. The metaphor persists, showing fallen chess pieces scattered across the board. The voice explains that they simply cannot win, and that if they were to somehow defeat him, all that would remain are pieces thrown out of balance. Sierra looks at Ari, her voice filled with regret as she apologizes for failing to fight alongside her until the very end. However, her gaze quickly shifts to one of fierce determination, vowing that she will not let the sacrifice of their comrade be in vain. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts as Sarah and Kai leap into the air, charging toward Elk. With a competitive spark, Sarah shouts that she'll be the one taking the flag. With an explosive burst of speed, Sierra and Kai slam into the earth, sending debris flying and carving a deep trench into the ground. If you don't mind, Sierra shouts, her determination peaking as she charges relentlessly toward her target. Shocked by the sudden upheaval, Sarah and Kai realize that Elk has detonated the tree roots underground to thwart their assault. Shouts to Sierra. Realizing he finally understands Elk's skill, he recognizes that Elk has the ability to blow up anything he touches. With a smug smile on his face, Elk looks at his opponents and questions their understanding of his abilities, asking if they truly believe that what just happened was merely an attack. Looking at the shattered earth, Sierra suddenly realizes the truth. Elk didn't just blow up the roots to stop them, but to create a hole. From a distance, Elk simply confirms her realization with a cold exactly. Elk calmly explains his true motive, stating that he created the hole to save his comrade. Kai scoffs, claiming that no matter how many strategies Elk comes up with, they are all useless. Unbothered, Elk looks at them with a smug smile and asks how they intend to respond. A metaphorical image of fallen chess pieces appears on a board, with a narration stating that the piece that lost telekinesis only has one option. The thought concludes with a stark reality. For a piece that has lost its power, the only option left is to flee. Kai is left reeling in the crater, completely overwhelmed by Elk Kinesis dominance. As the metaphorical chess piece crashes down, Kai is overwhelmed by the sudden image. Confused and terrified, he gasps, wondering what the hell this vision is. Kai stands frozen, his mind racing as an inexplicable sensation floods his senses. He wonders if his instincts had already sensed this overwhelming presence. Sarah's expression turns to one of pure shock and disbelief. As the crushing sensation floods her senses, she realizes that the power Elk possesses is far beyond anything she imagined. An extreme close-up of Sira's eye captures her expression of pure shock and dread as she fully realizes the terrifying gap in their strength. A blinding light erupts, tearing through the ground and sending debris flying in every direction. In the face of such absolute power, there is only one outcome, a total loss. Sira comes to a shocking realization. The blast she unleashed had merely destroyed the hood Elk was wearing. In reality, Elk had managed to dodge the attack entirely, waiting patiently behind them for this exact moment to reveal himself. Those two didn't run away. They simply retreated from his range of attack. Their teamwork was flawless, and for a moment, they truly ruled the board. Sira looks on with a gaze of total resignation. She admits that everything was perfect, yet they still lost. Offering a final, heartbreaking apology to everyone, the scene shifts to a medical facility. A nurse pushes a gurney carrying an unconscious Sira while Kinesis follows closely by her side, watching over her in silence. The scene is revealed to be the emergency tent of the martial arts tournament. Kinesis and a Neri member stand silently beside the bed, watching over the unconscious Sira inside the emergency tent. A Neri member notices Elk's uneasy expression. He tells Elk to believe in the words of the medical team and asks if he is worried about Sira, prompting a dismissive click of the tongue from Elk. Kinesis looks down with a heavy heart, quietly admitting, "We lost." Neri simply responds with a yeah as a heavy silence falls between them in the emergency tent. A heavy silence lingers in the tent as a ring is brought into view. "Let me ask you one thing," one of them says, breaking the stillness. Recalling the moment of victory, the defeated opponent asks Kinesis why he didn't simply kill him before taking the flag. Elk calmly replies that while he would have in a different kind of fight, this is a martial arts tournament. The opponent looks at him, realizing that Elk had known the match was over long before the final blow. The opponent looks at Elk with a sense of respect, remarking that he is decisive and thorough. Elk, standing beside Sira, calmly admits his defeat. The view opens up to the vast and imposing main arena of the martial arts tournament. An excited announcer shouts into the microphone, announcing that the return magic has been activated. As the crowd watches intently from the sidelines, he builds the suspense, preparing to reveal the first person to secure a spot in the main tournament. The announcer's voice booms across the arena, announcing that the first team to secure a spot in the main tournament is the one led by the top student, Elwood. Elwood waves confidently to the crowd, flanked by his teammates Sai and Theo. The announcer exclaims what a triumphant return it is, highlighting that Elwood is flanked by the prestigious Swordmaster and Magic Saint. Looking out over the cheering crowd, Elwood thinks to himself that despite all the chaos, they still managed to be the first to return. He now wonders what kind of formidable opponents they will have to face in the main tournament. One of Elwood's teammates, a blonde man in a fur collar, admits that he stopped hoping for a challenge the moment he realized he was on the same team as the top student. Hicks's sister, a Magic Saint, agrees, dismissively noting that it's unlikely anyone at a mere school event could possibly meet his high expectations. From a high vantage point, a figure in a suit looks down upon the arena, observing Elwood and his team. Nearby, Swordmaster gazes up at the imposing structure of the stadium. From the high balcony, a plump man with a mustache watches the proceedings with a smug smile, remarking on how Lord Rashuo's team was the quickest to qualify for the main tournament. Riku continues to flatter the situation, remarking that such a performance is exactly what is expected from the heir to the House of Kinesis. However, Duke Kinesis cuts him off with a single cold word, "Wrong," leaving Riku completely bewildered. Duke Kinesis coldly clarifies the truth, stating that Rashu is merely the second son, not the primary heir. Swordmaster scoffs, mocking Riku for getting so excited just by being an accessory to royalty. Meanwhile, Duke Kinesis remains silent for a moment before cursing Roshuo under his breath. Duke Kinesis coldly declares that his house requires absolute talent that overwhelms all others, viewing anyone content with the Academy's level as useless. Intrigued by this standard, Riku asks about the fate of the eldest son. Duke Kinesis dismisses the inquiry, stating that the eldest son died long ago. However, Kinesis steps forward and shocks them by declaring that he is the eldest son of the Kinesis ducal house. The scene shifts away from the tension at the balcony to a quiet forest. Kinesis sits in silence with Kai and Mira, while Mira looks on with a confused expression. Mira panics, waving her arms in distress as she struggles to process the sudden news. She frantically demands an explanation, claiming her brain can't keep up with the shock, while Kai remains silent with a stern expression. Elk apologizes for the sudden revelation, but decides to be honest with his teammates. Explained he is actually the eldest son of the ducal house, and that his younger brother, Roshuo, tried to kill him. Because his family covered up the incident, the rest of the world believes he is dead, and his siblings are completely unaware that he is even alive, let alone attending the same academy. Mira is completely stunned, realizing that Elk's revelation involves a major scandal within a powerful ducal house of the Dio kingdom. Meanwhile, Kai takes a moment to process the information and tells Elk that he understands. But there is one thing he wants to ask. Kai points out the danger of Elk's situation, questioning why someone with such a volatile backstory would risk enrolling in the academy. Elk calmly acknowledges the question and tells Kai to proceed. With a cold and determined expression, Elk finally answers Kai's question. He reveals that the sole reason he enrolled in the academy was for one thing: revenge against the Kinesis family. Elk admits that at first, he thought a little payback would be enough. However, after arriving at the academy and meeting those two, his perspective has begun to change. Elk Kinesis looks down, his expression heavy with guilt and resolve. He confesses the cold truth, that he is using Gumbo, Finn, and his teammates simply as a way to enter the tournament. As he speaks, the hatred he had tried so hard to ignore comes flooding back into his heart. Haunted by memories of the pain and humiliation he endured in front of a massive crowd, Elk's hatred intensifies. He vows to make those who wronged him suffer even more, determined to return every bit of that agony multiplied. Mira looks at Elk with a shocked and unsettled expression, calling out to him as she reacts to the sudden shift in his demeanor. Kai bursts into a loud, boisterous laugh, seemingly unfazed by Elk's intense confession. "So in other words," he exclaims. Elk, Kinesis, and Mira stare in utter disbelief, completely thrown off by Kai's unexpected reaction to the revelation of Elk's quest for revenge. Kai laughs off the intensity of the moment, admitting he doesn't understand the complicated details. He bluntly summarizes Elk's deep-seated hatred as simply being pissed at annoying little siblings and wanting to punch them to shut them up. Kai crosses his arms with a smug expression, completely ignoring the gravity of the situation. He concludes with a smirk that what Elk really wants is nothing more than a sibling fight. Kai continues to brush off the darkness of Elk's revenge, instead framing the rivalry as an inevitable clash between top contenders. To him, this is simply a battle for victory in the championship. Kai pumps himself up, declaring his determination to kick their opponents' asses and win the entire competition. Myra agrees with enthusiasm, assuring Elk Kinesis that they will support him and won't stand in the way of whatever he intends to do. Myra looks at Elk with a gentle and understanding expression, admitting that while his confession was shocking, she doesn't feel like he was using them for his own ends. Moved by the support of his companions, Elk Kinesis addresses Gumbo and Finn, telling them there is something he has been meaning to say, and sincerely thanks them for being on his team. Suddenly, a loud blast from a trumpet echoes through the forest. Elk Kinesis looks around in confusion, wondering what the sound is. He questions if it is the signal for the end of the flag battle, but Elk remains cautious, warning his teammates to stay on guard and prepare for an incoming attack. The moment of tension is shattered as Elk Kinesis lunges forward with an explosive burst of speed. The sheer force of his movement is so sudden and powerful that it sends Kai reeling backward, leaving both him and Finn stunned by the unexpected surge of power. Both Kai and Finn are caught in a state of utter shock, their expressions mirroring their confusion as they struggle to process Elk's instantaneous movement. Still reeling from Elk's sudden burst of speed, Kai looks around in confusion and calls out for Gumbo. With a sudden flash of speed, Elk Kinesis reappears instantly. He turns slightly, looking toward his companions and asks, "Was that you?" Suddenly, a towering stone golem looms over the forest, its voice booming as it asks if Elk is the one who took down Gumbo. Unfazed by the creature's immense size, Elk calmly challenges it, asking what would happen if he indeed were the one. A powerful impact shatters the Talus defenses. Tally admits that Elk is as formidable as he had suspected from watching his previous battle. Unmoved by the praise, Elk demands that Tally hand over the flag immediately, as he needs to get his friend to the infirmary. Tally reveals that his strength comes from his earthen armor skill, which allows him to fight encased in the very earth. However, as the stone begins to crumble, Elk Kinesis is puzzled, questioning if the golem's true body is hidden somewhere else. Just as Tally speaks of his skill's evolution, the earth begins to shake, and sharp stone pillars suddenly burst from the ground around Elk Kinesis. Talus' voice booms as he declares that the very earth has become his domain. Kai lies defeated on the ground, while Elk Kinesis looks on with a shocked expression, realizing the scale of the golem's power. Elk Kinesis' shock quickly vanishes, replaced by a cold, sharp determination. Glancing at the pinned Kai, he narrows his eyes and declares that this battle is now his for the taking. With a fierce determination, Elk Kinesis launches himself forward like a projectile, shouting that he won't let the enemy prevail. With a blinding burst of speed, Elk Kinesis closes the distance instantly. Before she can even process his movement, he delivers a powerful blow, leaving the girl stunned and screaming in confusion and pain. Shocked and confused, Kira looks down at her hand, only to find it crawling with mysterious bugs. Elk Kinesis finds himself suddenly swarmed by insects, frantically trying to shake them off his body. Amidst the chaos, Finn cries out in panic, informing him that Gumbo is gone and they must move quickly to save him. A massive shockwave erupts nearby, sending a deafening sound through the air. Finny and Yuna both stop in their tracks, looking on in confusion and alarm at the sudden disturbance. Yuna stares in utter disbelief at the scene before her. A colossal explosion has ripped through the area, and standing calmly in the center of the wreckage are Elk, Kinesis, and Cian. The scale of the destruction is immense, with a colossal shockwave tearing through the landscape. Amidst the chaos, Elk, Kinesis, and Cian remain unscathed, having completely wiped out their enemy in a single devastating blow. A girl with hair in buns plays her trumpet with a playful expression, revealing that she is the one controlling the vermin. She explains that while a single insect is insignificant, under the direction of a maestro like Lord Chuda, they become a magnificent army. Her manipulation skill allows her to control any living creature that hears the sound of her instrument. The scene shifts to a different location. A light-haired figure in a cloak sits calmly, asking their companion Rox if they manage to retrieve the flag. Rox confirms that he has the flag in his possession. Eden then addresses him as Lord Marcos. A massive shockwave tears through the forest, instantly wiping out the insect army. Lyra looks on with sadistic glee, noting how her insects can devour a huge tree in an instant. She chuckles to herself, imagining the gruesome fate of humans if they were to be consumed, claiming not a single bone would be left behind. Lyra's arrogant laughter is abruptly interrupted. She looks around in utter confusion and shock, completely blindsided by something happening around her. Lyra gazes at the mysterious coiled object before her, questioning what on earth it could be. The mysterious figure is revealed to be Elk Kinesis, his sharp eyes staring intensely from behind his mask. Lyra is completely bewildered, wondering how they could have survived the attack. She quickly realizes that by hiding under the roots, they blocked their carbon dioxide, making them invisible to the insects that track their prey by the air they exhale. Refusing to back down, Lyra shouts in frustration, declaring that the insects were not her only means of attack. Lyra puts her horn to her lips and blows, triggering a massive explosion of energy. But Elk Kinesis is unfazed, extending his hand to intercept the attack with a surge of his own overwhelming power. Elk Kinesis easily stops a bird from charging at him, deducing that Lyra was attempting a surprise aerial attack. Lyra, visibly shaken and annoyed, tries to belittle him, claiming he is no longer a threat now that his secret is revealed. However, Elk's absolute calmness only infuriates her further, leading her to scream at him for being so indifferent, even though one of his allies has been defeated. A sudden impact shakes the ground as Gumbo declares his refusal to be defeated. Lyra is stunned, shouting in disbelief that he is still alive, while Elk Kinesis simply looks on with a cold, unfazed expression. Gumbo smugly reveals that he only fainted because he had hardened the surface of his face into steel to withstand the bird attack. He then declares his intention to settle the match properly, while those around him react with confusion. Marcos Paisley is completely infuriated by Gumbo's defiance, shouting at the top of his lungs and calling him a peasant for getting carried away. The armored man shouts with aggression, eager to fight Gumbo and insulting him as a clay doll bastard. However, Elk Kinesis intervenes with a calm demeanor, telling Lord Marcos to step aside as he prepares to deal with the attacker himself. The armored man sneers, expressing his disbelief that Elk would serve someone as devoid of dignity as Marcos. Unmoved, Elk Kinesis responds firmly, stating that he owes a great deal to Marcos, and begins to address the man's arrogance. A towering tali looms over the battlefield, its rocky form imposing and heavy. Despite the creature's size, Elk Kinesis remains unfazed, confidently stating that defeating it won't be hard at all. Gumbo flexes his arm with a confident, smug expression, feeling pumped up. He shouts nice, and warns that his steel skill will keep him in a position of strength. Gumbo lets out a fierce roar, channeling his strength as he prepares to tear through the enemy's stony exterior. Gumbo's strike connects with full force, but to his utter shock, it has no effect on the massive Talai. As Gumbo reels from the failure, Talai coldly informs him that he doesn't understand the nature of his opponent, noting that soil is merely a component of earth. Tali continues to lecture Gumbo, describing the absolute power of earth as a balance of hardness that supports all things, and softness that swallows everything. With this overwhelming skill, Tali declares that Gumbo has no hope of victory. As he is pushed back and overwhelmed, a panicked Gumbo suddenly realizes a guard is nearby. Tali's overwhelming power manifests in a sudden crushing blow. Gumbo is sent flying through the air, completely blindsided by the force of the impact. He can only stare in disbelief as he is effortlessly overpowered. Gumbo is left completely incapacitated, lying face down in the wreckage of the battlefield. Tali looks down at the defeated Gumbo, coldly reminding him of the overwhelming gap in their abilities and the futility of his struggle. Beside them, Eden bursts into laughter, pointing and mocking Gumbo's failure. Tali looks down at the broken Gumbo, delivering a final mocking comment to rub in the absolute difference in their power. Gumbo pushes himself up from the debris, regaining his footing. He looks at Tali with a stubborn expression, challenging the notion that he has been properly defeated. Gumbo launches a desperate strike, but it is useless. As he is pushed back by the golem's absolute hardness, he realizes with frustration that his skill simply won't work on Tali. As the world blurs, Gumbo feels the pain fading away. He struggles to recall the intensity of the fight, wondering how many punches he had taken and dealt before his consciousness finally slips away. In the fading moments of his consciousness, Gumbo reflects on a fundamental truth. No matter what skill one possesses, it can always be strengthened through application and hard work. The scene shifts to Kinesis, who looks on with a calm expression, silently agreeing with Gumbo's conviction that any skill can be mastered through sheer effort. Kinesis continues his thoughts, addressing Gumbo. He emphasizes that victory isn't guaranteed simply by the skill one is born with, speaking from his own perspective as a user of telekinesis. Elk recalls Gumbo's unwavering spirit, acknowledging the belief that through hard work, any skill can become even stronger. A sudden violent explosion erupts on the battlefield, catching everyone by surprise. The Swordmaster watches in disbelief as Kinesis achieves the unthinkable, shattering the formidable armor of the Tali Tali. The Swordmaster regains his composure, his expression hardening with fierce resolve. He cannot accept being surpassed by Elk, declaring that he refuses to lose to someone like him as he readies his massive blade for a counterattack. The scene shifts to a symbolic void, showing Kinesis from behind. An internal monologue reveals a deep sense of inadequacy, acknowledging that the distance between their strengths is so vast that the goal of catching up feels impossibly far away. The Swordmaster observes the aftermath, realizing that Elk's skills have evolved rapidly. He ponders the nature of Elk's destructive power, theorizing that by manipulating materials much like his own steel skin and iron powder, an explosion can be triggered. The Swordmaster reflects on his own limitations, noting that he had already used his right arm for a previous strike. He realizes that while he can create explosions, his own arm simply cannot handle the same overwhelming explosive force that Elk managed to unleash. The Swordmaster clicks his tongue, realizing that his secret has been spilled. Meanwhile, Tali analyzes the attack as a mere makeshift dust explosion, questioning whether Kinesis will be able to land such a hit one more time. The Swordmaster and Tali stand opposite each other in the barren wasteland, their attention fixed on Kinesis, as the tension mounts following Tali's challenge. Tali lunges forward with a devastating blow, but instead of dodging, the Swordmaster takes the full force of the attack. The impact is massive, leaving observers shocked that he chose to take the hit directly. Tali looms over the Swordmaster, asserting his absolute dominance. "I've told you this before," the golem declares coldly. "There's no way you will win." Nearby, the magic saint watches the intense confrontation with a look of shock. Just as Tali believes the fight is decided, the Swordmaster strikes back with a powerful blow to the golem's leg. With a confident smirk, he declares that he has already won, leaving Tali completely shocked by the sudden reversal. The immense force of the blow sends Tali soaring upward, his stone form fracturing and breaking apart. He crashes back down to the earth with a heavy thud, left dazed and utterly broken by the Swordmaster's overwhelming power. Tali stands trembling and wide-eyed, completely overwhelmed by the power of the strike that just crushed him. In a nearby glimpse, the Swordmaster looks on, witnessing the absolute defeat of the golem. Away from the main battle, Lyra raises her hands in a cheerful surrender. Rin, eager to proceed, encourages the group to go and secure their flag. But Ren stands aside, his gaze distant as he warns that the time for something significant is almost here. Confused by his words, Ren asks Ren what he means by it being almost time. Ren calmly responds that he is referring to the match taking place elsewhere. Lyra is completely shaken, sweating in panic as she realizes the overwhelming strength of her opponents. Frustrated and bewildered, she curses and turns to Lord Marcos, questioning why he warned them to be wary of Elwood's team when these current combatants have just effortlessly crushed her ultimate attacks. Gumbo suddenly lunges and pins Lyra to the ground, leaving her gasping in shock. Ren looks on calmly, reminding them that he knew this moment was coming, while Rin shouts out Gumbo's name in surprise. Rin and Rin gather around Gumbo in the forest, with curiously asking if he emerged victorious. Rin modestly claims she simply didn't want to get in the way. However, Gumbo takes a jab at Elk, suggesting that the rest of the team was merely playing around while he did all the heavy lifting. This immediately earns him a furious, indignant shout from Elk. Gumbo smugly shows off the captured flag, leaving Lyra in a state of utter shock. With a confident grin, he tells them to look forward to the main battle. Rin notes that there is still more to look forward to in the upcoming main battle. Gumbo bursts into loud laughter, teasingly warning the others not to be cowards and chicken out. Elk, remaining composed behind his mask, remarks that Gumbo is being quite bold. With their fists raised high in the air, the group cheers in victory, celebrating the successful capture of the third flag. Elk, Finn, and the Swordmaster stand together in the center of the arena, their backs to the viewer as they face the vast audience, the atmosphere thick with tension and victory. As the thunderous roar of the crowd fills the air, Elk, Ren, and Rin look on in awe. They realize that they are the last team left, basking in the amazing cheers echoing throughout the arena, while Elk and his teammates believe they are the last ones standing. Soren observes the arena and corrects the notion, stating that there are actually 4 teams remaining more than he had expected. As the officials look on, it becomes apparent that there is a much bigger meaning behind this flag battle. The focus shifts to 3 key figures remaining in the arena. One has gained new power, another has revealed their true potential, and the last has proven themselves worthy of victory. Well done to all of you remaining, Soren remarks with a chuckle, acknowledging that it was a good match. Soren informs the participants that a tournament will take place, with the specific teams to be announced the following day. With a wave, he bids them farewell, bringing the day's events to a close. What do you mean, see you tomorrow? She screams in frustration, completely caught off guard by Soren's sudden dismissal. As Soren departs, Elsie, the vice head, steps forward to criticize his improper behavior. Despite her youthful appearance, she is actually in her 70s and a longtime friend of Soren. She commands the attention of the remaining participants, including Elk and Rin, announcing that she will be the one to explain the precautions for the upcoming events. Elsie informs the 4 remaining teams that accommodation facilities have been prepared for them to stay in. Until tomorrow, she emphasizes that the facilities are perfect and that meals will be delivered, instructing them to reach out to the staff for any further assistance. Elk looks doubtful, muttering that there's no way the facilities are actually good. Beside him, Emma beams with excitement, imagining that the accommodations might be fancy. Elsie continues her instructions, sternly declaring that the use of skills or magic while waiting in the facilities is strictly forbidden. She explains that this rule was implemented because of past participants who foolishly spent the entire night attempting to buff their teammates using magic or drugs. Elsie continues her warning, noting that a previous team suffered a loss for attempting to cheat. She reminds the remaining winners that from this point on, only their true abilities will be put to the test. Elsie's expression turns stern as she delivers her final warning, telling the participants not to expect any real victory from tomfoolery done overnight. Watching from the side, Yuna thinks to herself that they already knew this from the start. Following the instructions, the Swordmaster steps forward and announces that he will be guiding the first winning team. Elk and the Magic Saint stand by as a staff member, calls out for them to hurry along. With a confident wink and a gesture, the Swordmaster begins guiding Elk, Mira, and the Magic Saint away from the arena and toward their designated resting area. The Swordmaster walks ahead, leading the group toward their destination. Following closely behind, Elkinesis maintains a sharp and observant gaze as they move forward. As they make their way to the accommodations, the Swordmaster turns to Kai and asks, "Who was that?" Kai responds casually, describing the person as something like a friend. Suddenly, Elk, Kai, and Mira are caught off guard, their expressions shifting to pure shock and wonder as they witness something unexpected. As they step inside, Kai lets out a loud shout of amazement, completely overwhelmed by the lavishness of their new quarters. Mira excitedly shows Elk a spot she finds perfect for working out, while Kai happily munches on some fruits found in the room. Overwhelmed by their energy, Elk tells Kai to stop eating them. While Elwood and Sia praise the team for their amazing performance in clearing the flag battle, Elk can only react with a sigh as his teammates loudly call out his name from across the room. Elk is shocked to find Emma and Nick visiting them. They have brought a stack of spare battle clothes for everyone, with Elwood and Nick mentioning that they thought the group might need some help. Elk turns to Emma and apologizes for ruining the clothes she had carefully crafted for the team. Emma smiles warmly and tells him not to apologize, explaining that the damage is proof that the clothes fulfilled their purpose of protecting him. Touched by her kindness, Elk realizes that Emma's support was just as vital as that of his teammates throughout the flag battle. Nick is completely dazzled by the feast laid out before them. He acknowledges that the room is amazing. He is even more impressed by the delivered food, exclaiming that it is luxury itself. Nick asks Emma what is wrong when he notices her acting mysterious. After a quick whisper between the two, Nick finishes arranging the lavish spread of food on the table and asks Emma to go call the rest of the group for the meal. Despite the luxurious meal being ready, the battle has taken its toll. Elk, Kai, and Mira are seen fast asleep, snoring and dreaming, completely oblivious to the dinner waiting for them. Nick looks on with a soft expression, acknowledging that Elk, Gumbo and Finn all gave their absolute best in the battle. Emma listens and softly agrees, sharing the sentiment. Elk sleeps peacefully, completely exhausted. Looking at him, Nick and Emma decide to let them sleep for just a bit more. As Elk drifts in deep sleep, he is suddenly transported into a vision there. Peppina appears, calling his name with desperation and urgency, pleading for him to notice her. Bewildered, Elk questions if he is merely dreaming. Peppina dismisses the nature of the vision and demands his attention, reminding him that she, like him, exists in the space between life and death. She explains that those in this state are typically granted new skills before being revived and reveals a shocking truth. There is a time difference of several thousand years between this realm and the world he knows. Peppina continues her explanation, telling Elk that there are people like him in his own world, who formed an organization specifically to summon a goddess into his era. Although she admits such a feat is impossible, she notes that the group is composed of eccentric individuals with erratic skills who are attempting crazy things. Just as she is about to reveal the name of this organization, she pauses to remember it. Peppina finally reveals the name of the mysterious and unstable organization, Seven's Haven. Peppina explains that, as the name suggests, there are 7 people in the organization. With a playful smile, she asks Elk to take care of those 7 people for her whenever he has the time, telling him to just keep it in the back of his mind. With a final bye now, the vision begins to fade. Elk wakes from his slumber, clenching his chest as he reflects on the encounter. He realizes that the vision from the previous night wasn't just a dream, but a reality, leaving him puzzled about the 7 goddess believers who, like him, came from the in-between. Putting the mystery of the 7 believers behind him for now, Elk refocuses his attention on the current conflict and tells his companions it's time to move. 8. Nick and Rian look on, their expressions ranging from concern to determination as they prepare to move out with Elk. With a determined stride, Elk and his companions step forward. The tension peaks as the martial arts competition team finals tournament finally begins. The rules for the tournament are laid out. Based on the results of yesterday's flag battle, the teams have been divided into 2 groups according to their arrival order, and the finals will proceed in a bracket format. The rules of the competition are further clarified. Each match will consist of one-on-one duels, and the first team to secure 2 victories will be declared the winner. Alina, the senior student in charge of guidance for Team Gumbo, winks confidently as she finishes explaining the rules, asking the participants if everything is clear, or if they have any questions. Lena adopts a mischievous tone, offering a little something from her as their big sis to the energetic students. However, Elk, Finn, and Kai immediately shout back in unison, rejecting her playful gesture. Alina reveals her present, teleportation orbs. She explains that these orbs will transport each of them directly to the arena. Alina explains that the numbers engraved on the teleportation orbs will determine the team's battle order, where I is the vanguard, I is the middle guard, and I is the captain. Elk observes that the magic used is identical to that of yesterday's flag race, and realizes that since he has orb number I, he will be the second one to enter the battle. Elena laughs and urges the group to decide their positions quickly. Mira is shocked to discover that she has been assigned as the captain, but Kai reassures her that the current order is fine since they don't know the opponent's lineup. Meanwhile, Elk considers the best order for them to enter the battle. A woman in a dark uniform stands with her hands on her hips, looking stern and impatient. She remarks that the explanation should be finished and the brackets announced by now, as the main event should be starting soon, mentioning the principal, or rather, the vice principal. Kai looks down at the orb in his hand with a surprised expression as it suddenly emits a bright light. He exclaims in surprise, noting that the orbs are glowing. Kai is taken aback by the suddenness of the teleportation. As the light fades, Alina appears before them, welcoming everyone, and getting ready to announce the first match of the tournament. Alina exclaims with excitement as she reveals the first match, highlighting that both lead positions are held by team leaders. The first match is officially announced: Gumbo versus Caplico. Both fighters stand ready, radiating confidence as they prepare for the battle. With the participants in place, the announcer declares the start of the match. Gumbo wears a determined and confident expression, ready to face his opponent. With the match officially underway, Gumbo doesn't waste a second, lunging forward with an explosive punch to take the initiative. The scene cuts away to the waiting room. Nina turns to Alina and asks, Alina-senpai, is there a restroom here in the waiting room? Alina confirms that there is a restroom and tells Nina to just head out to find the facilities. Nina agrees, but Cian immediately interjects, reminding them that they aren't allowed outside to prevent any cheating, to which Alina quickly agrees. Alina shifts the conversation, noting with a smile that the tournament brings back memories, while Cian simply sits in silence. Cian asks Alina if she had also participated in the martial arts tournament. Alina smiles and admits that she did, though only in team matches since her skills aren't suited for direct combat. Alina leans in close to Cian, admitting with a bashful laugh that her true goal was to be an adventurer. Cian, flustered by the sudden proximity and the confession, asks in surprise if she really wanted to be an adventurer. Alina becomes incredibly passionate as she describes her dream, imagining the thrill of traveling to unexplored dungeons worldwide and collecting treasures. Cian can only watch in utter disbelief at her sudden burst of energy. Alina lets out a sheepish laugh, admitting that her grand ambitions are just dreams for now, as she hasn't even graduated from the academy. Cian stands by, watching her with a bewildered expression. Alina smiles and turns the conversation toward a new subject, curiously asking Elk if he has ever heard of relics. Cian repeats the word relics with curiosity. Alina then describes them as rare treasures occasionally left behind in dungeons, noting that they are known by many different names, including driftwood from another world, ancient heritage, and even God's lost items. Cian repeats the phrase, God's lost items, with a look of surprise, internally questioning if the goddess Peppina is somehow involved. Alina explains the strict laws regarding relics, noting that ownership belongs to the first discoverer and cannot be overridden even by the king. She further reveals that the principal and the other 5 stars are also among those who possess these rare items. Alina laughs, praising Cian for being so spirited and calling them senpai. Overwhelmed with excitement, she exclaims that she is seriously jealous and wants to become an adventurer too. Alina continues her cheerful chatter. Meanwhile, Cian watches her, thinking that she seems quite similar to Peppina, though he admits that at first he couldn't quite figure out what kind of person she was. Suddenly, the quiet atmosphere is shattered as Kai bursts into the room with an overwhelming presence, leaving Alina and Cian completely startled. Alina looks on with curiosity, wondering what it implies for him to come back here. Meanwhile, Cian simply calls out, Gumbo! Gumbo bursts in with overwhelming energy, shouting that they won, and claiming there was no way he could have lost. He throws his arm around Cian, who reacts with surprise and confusion at the sudden outburst. Gumbo smirks, teasing Elk for having some nerve and referencing a decision made long ago. Cian, still hooded, calmly adds that since they and Finn were waiting, it would have been okay to lose. Gumbo wears a confident smile, boasting that there was no way he could have lost. He expresses his excitement over the rare opportunity to engage in a carefree, brotherly brawl where he could push himself to the limit without holding back. In a quiet moment of reflection, Cian looks down at Gumbo, who lies defeated and breathless on the ground. Cian acknowledges Gumbo's skill, admitting that he truly was the best vanguard. As the first battle concludes, the focus shifts to the second match. Cian steps forward into the arena, driven by a single goal to bring victory to the team. The atmosphere intensifies as the matchup for the second round is revealed. Elk versus Leos. Leos greets his opponent with an arrogant smile, claiming that Elk is unlucky to have faced him. He strikes a dramatic pose, wielding 2 whips and shouting about his Leo-style whip-lashing punishment. Watching this eccentric display, Elk is left completely bewildered, wondering if such a person is actually a freshman like himself. Leos wastes no time, launching a fierce attack with his whip while shouting for Elk to take it. Facing the onslaught, Elk remains unfazed, noting that it had been a long time since he engaged in weapon combat, not since his grueling training with Peppina. A flashback reveals Peppina leading Elk through her grueling regimen. With an enthusiastic smile, she introduces special training number 263, teaching him the art of the weapons counter amidst a field of blades. Peppina enthusiastically kicks off the training, declaring that they have plenty of time to master the traits and weaknesses of every single weapon. A bewildered Elk can only stare, as Peppina suddenly presents a halberd, marking the start of his first lesson. Peppina delivers a devastating blow that sends Elk crashing to the ground. Teasing him for his lack of speed, she tells him she'll simply revive him so they can go again, highlighting the relentless and extreme nature of his training. Leo shouts aggressively, claiming that Elk was only saved by luck. However, his confidence quickly vanishes as he realizes his attack didn't land, leaving him bewildered and nervous. As he faces his opponent, Elk recalls Peppina's voice guiding him. He identifies the weapon as a skill-made leather whip, roughly 5 meters in length, and remembers her explanation that a whip attack operates with 2 different speeds at the same time. Leo shouts that he is now getting serious as he lashes out with his whip. As the attack descends, Elk continues his mental analysis, remembering Peppina's advice. Since the tip of a whip moves too fast for human eyes to track, the secret to countering it is to focus on the slower movement of the handle. Elk narrows his eyes, focusing intently on the supersonic speed of the incoming attacks. He realizes that Peppina's teachings hold true, providing him with the insight needed to handle the situation. With a calm and composed demeanor, Elk remains stationary as Leos' supersonic whip strikes rain down around him, missing him entirely. Yuri watches the scene with wide eyes, completely stunned. She cannot believe what she is seeing, questioning if this is some kind of joke as Elk makes Laios' powerful attacks look completely useless. Leo screams in utter frustration, unable to comprehend how his supersonic attacks are failing. He demands to know what kind of skill Elk is using to evade him so effortlessly. But Elk simply replies with a cold, short answer: none. Elk calmly explains that training and experience can achieve these results even without the use of skills. He then reveals a fragment of the broken weapon in his hand, mocking Laios by pointing out that his precious whip is now in shreds and asking what he plans to do now. Furious that his weapon was shredded, Laios reveals the secret of his ability, explaining that his skill allows the whip to stretch and shrink. He screams in rage, vowing that next time he will slap that smug face of Elk's. Laios unleashes his snake whip attack with intensity, but Elk avoids the strike with ease. As he moves, Elk calmly points out the flaw in Laios' approach, noting that announcing his target makes the attack completely predictable. Yuri watches in disbelief, eventually agreeing that Elk is right. With a final overwhelming display of power, Elk brings the battle to a sudden end. As Laios is sent flying back in total defeat, the announcer's voice booms across the arena, declaring Elk the winner. Kai observes that Elk looks tired after the fight. Yuri curiously asks if the opponent was a tough one, but Elk simply replies that he wasn't, jokingly wondering if he's just dumb. The scoreboard flashes the final result. Team Elwood is the winner, having defeated Team Titan. This victory is pivotal, as it decides the teams for the upcoming final match. A close-up focuses on a gloved hand tightening its grip on the hilt of a sword, as Elk prepares himself for what lies ahead. With a composed and knowing smile, Ian reflects on the victory, stating that it was only expected that the team would make it to the finals. Elk stands silently amidst the massive ice shards and wreckage of the battlefield. An announcer's voice echoes through the area, expressing a desire to begin the finals immediately, but apologizing because the arena must be repaired first. Leon stands amidst the wreckage of the arena, looking completely exhausted. He laments his misfortune, questioning why a business major like himself is responsible for the venue setup, just when he finally had a day off to laze around. With a heavy sigh and a muttered damn, he eventually resigns himself to the task, admitting that it simply can't be helped. Lee stands before the devastated landscape, looking out over the jagged shards of rock and ruins that now make up the arena. Overwhelmed by the sight, he can only lament the terrible state of the venue. A student looks at the ruins in disbelief, questioning how the person who created such a massive ice block could have actually lost. Leon looks up with a serious expression, solemnly agreeing that those who emerge victorious in this event are simply on a whole different level. Context: a close-up of a female student's surprised expression. Tag female student. Name: Isnu. False. Role: observer. Speech. Huh? No idea. What kind of skill does that student possess? Penury. A female student expresses her bewilderment, wondering what kind of overwhelming skill the winner possessed to defeat such a powerful ice ability. Script. Huh? No idea. What kind of skill does that student have to beat a skill like this? She wonders, completely baffled by the sheer disparity in power. A glimpse of the intense fight is revealed, showing an illustrative figure who, with a single swift motion, draws his sword, demonstrating the overwhelming power that contributed to the arena's destruction. The sheer power of the strike is revealed as the ice is completely shredded, all from the simple act of unsheathing the sword. The highlight concludes with a final shot of the defeated opponent, who has fallen to his knees amidst the ruins of the ice, completely overwhelmed by the illustrative figure's power. The Aven are completely stunned, unable to believe that a simple sword draw could effortlessly overpower such a formidable skill. As the screen prompts the audience to wait for the finals, someone enthusiastically encourages Leon to watch, promising him something incredible. Leon considers the suggestion, musing that he might watch the finals once he is finished with his current task. The scene transitions to the exterior of the finals tournament contestant waiting room, where the top competitors are gathered. Inside the waiting room, Kian carefully adjusts Elk Kinesis' attire to ensure he looks sharp. He notes that the venue is already packed with people, eager to see him take the stage for the final match. Kian looks at the trio with a bright, energetic expression, gesturing toward them, as she declares that all three of them look perfect and are fully prepared to step onto the stage. Alina remarks that equality is important for their roles, though she seems to have a further point to make. The girl in the hood and mask politely thanks her, addressing her as Elena Senpai. As they prepare to enter the arena, Elk, Gumbo, and Finn are given a final push of encouragement to secure victory. The three of them respond with a powerful synchronized shout, yes, fully ready to face the finals. As they emerge into the arena, the sheer scale of the stadium and the thunderous cheers of the spectators overwhelm them. Finn remarks that the noise is even louder than it was during the flag battle, and Gumbo agrees, noting that the atmosphere feels different this time. Elk looks on, acknowledging the power of all those voices combined. Standing opposite their rivals in the arena, Elk reflects on the overwhelming noise surrounding them. He realizes that the massive roar of the crowd is not just general excitement, but is directed specifically at them. With the tension mounting in the arena, the announcer's voice booms across the crowd, declaring that both teams are ready to begin the final battle. The announcer enthusiastically explains the rules of the final match to the crowd. He declares that the format is a simple one-on battle, and the first team to secure 2 wins will be victorious. Additionally, he notes that for the finals specifically, selected members are permitted to confer with their teammates. The announcer's voice booms across the arena, emphasizing that strategy, unity, and talent will all be put to the test in this final battle. He explains the tactical dilemma facing the teams. They can either lead with their ace to secure an early victory, or save their strongest fighter to clash with the opponent's best. The announcer's voice booms across the arena, declaring that the final battle has officially begun. As the crowd erupts in cheers, Elk remains composed, noting that they are facing the National Prince and the Academy's elite, wielders of the legendary Sword Saint and Magic Saint skills. He finds the announcer's dramatic commentary fitting for the scale of the confrontation. The announcer declares that the Elwood team will make the first pick, introducing the rare genius and magic saint, Sarissa Kinesis. As she steps forward with an air of superiority, her dedicated fan club erupts in cheers. Witnessing this, Gumbo and Finn are visibly shaken, questioning if the opponents are so confident in their strength that they don't even need a strategy to win. While the crowd is focused on the opponent, Elk Kinesis calmly steps forward to take the lead. Kai and Finn can only stare in shock, completely caught off guard by his sudden decision. Finn calls out to Elk in disbelief, her expression filled with worry, while Elk maintains a cold, determined gaze, ready to face his opponent. Finn watches Elk with a worried yet determined gaze, while Elk remains calm and focused behind his hood, ready to face his opponent. Elk Kinesis calmly tells Finn to count on him. Finn, now filled with determination, reminds him that they are a team and declares that the 3 of them will win the battle. Elk Kinesis turns to Finn and asks, "Can you do it?" Looks back at him, appearing slightly taken aback by the question. Finn responds with absolute confidence, blushing with excitement as she tells Elk Kinesis to leave everything to her, firmly acknowledging him as her leader. With a determined look and a thumbs up, Finn charges forward. She thanks Elk and her other teammate for letting her rest during the previous match, playfully noting that even Elk might struggle against a girl, and declares her intention to secure the first win. Finn stands opposite her opponent, a confident blonde woman, as the announcer's voice echoes through the arena, beginning the call to start the first match. The announcer's signal to begin is barely finished before Finn bursts forward with explosive speed. She charges across the arena in a blur, leaving the blonde woman stunned as she closes the distance in an instant. Finn's initial assault is so incredibly fast that the announcer and the spectators can barely track her movements, leaving them questioning if she moved the instant the signal was given. However, just as the momentum peaks, she abruptly stops her attack, leaving her opponent confused as to why she would suddenly cease her onslaught. While the crowd wonders why she stopped, the opponent is paralyzed with terror. She realizes she cannot move a single muscle, screaming internally that everyone is wrong about the situation. Terrified and confused, the opponent finally realizes the truth. Finn is the one stopping her from moving. Terrified and unable to move a single muscle, the opponent's eyes widen in horror as she senses an incoming attack, leaving her completely defenseless. Overwhelmed by fear, the opponent raises her hand and screams that she forfeits. Finn stands there bewildered, and the crowd is left stunned by the sudden and unexpected surrender. The arena fills with the loud chatter of the confused crowd. Amidst the noise, Finn simply smiles, seemingly unfazed by the unexpected and swift outcome of the match. Finn clicks her tongue in slight frustration as she analyzes the fight. She admits to herself that she would struggle to defeat a resilient opponent in a one-and-own battle, concluding that her skill is best utilized when paired with a Magitype Vanguard. Standing in the center of the arena, with her arms wide open, the opponent shouts a determined promise to the crowd and Finn, vowing to change the outcome in the next match. The focus shifts to Roshuo Kinesis and Prince Elwood. As they sit together, the opponent declares her absolute confidence that they will secure a victory in their upcoming matches. The arena is filled with noise, as the crowd shouts the names of Elwood and Roshuo, wondering what kind of overwhelming match awaits them, and questioning the previous fighter's strange victory declaration. Sitting calmly amidst the chaos, Roshuo and Elwood acknowledge the intense buildup for their turn. Watching from the exclusive guest seats, an official is deeply impressed by the young lady's maturity. praising her for acknowledging her own weaknesses while maintaining respect for her team. An official watches with disdain, calling the forfeit pathetic and a mere attempt to build up her brother. In the arena, the crowd cheers wildly for Elwood and Rashuo, fueled by Sarissa's declaration. Kai scoffs at the cheap theater, but Kinesis calmly observes that Sarissa has been adept at this since she was a child. Sarissa Kinesis sits on a bench with her arms crossed and a frown on her face, looking displeased as the atmosphere around her remains heavy. A close-up of Sarissa's face reveals her simmering fury. With a glare of pure indignation, she declares that they have been completely underestimated. The roar of the crowd suddenly vanishes, replaced by a heavy, bewildered silence. As a new figure steps forward, the spectators are left in utter disbelief, shocked that this person is the second member of Team Elwood. The stunned silence of the crowd is met with the formal introduction of the team leader, Elwood, who stands imposing in his full armor. Meanwhile, Roshuo Kinesis looks on with a smug smile, seemingly amused by the situation. Elwood confidently declares his intention to take on a particular opponent, asking his teammates for their agreement. Kinesis gives a quiet affirmation while a small, energetic figure cheers him on to knock the enemy out. Mina turns her attention toward Elk, calling his name. Elwood turns toward Kinesis, questioning him about the percentage chance he believes he has of winning. Mina responds cryptically to Elwood's question, simply stating that who knows, while maintaining her mysterious expression. Mina looks toward Elwood, adding that the gumbo she knows is the type of person who gives everything to secure a win. Mina offers a brief apology to Elk before continuing her thought on Elwood. She explains that whether the chance of winning is 10% or a mere 1%, Elwood is the kind of person who will seize any opportunity to emerge victorious. As Elwood walks away, he tells Elk that his brotherly fight might have to wait a bit longer. Elwood breathes heavily, his resolve hardening as he declares that his only goal is to win the championship with his current team. Meanwhile, Kinesis looks on, stating that there is only one thing he wants to do right now. With both champions now assembled for the second match, Elwood clenches his fist, his eyes filled with determination as he shouts, "Let's go!" With a confident smile on his face, Elwood signals the start of the battle. Begin. As the match kicks off, Elwood wastes no time, leaping into the fray and activating his weaponization skill to turn his gear into a lethal instrument for a sudden attack. Gumbo lunges forward with explosive speed, striking toward Kinesis as he attacks. The weight of his teammates' expectations echoes in the air, urging him to secure the victory for them. Elk remains calm and composed, standing his ground against the onslaught. The second match begins with an explosive start. Gumbo lunges forward at high speed, closing the distance between him and a calm Kinesis in an instant. Gumbo clenches his fist tightly, channeling his strength for a powerful strike as he reaches Kinesis, who stands his ground with a composed expression. Gumbo's fist flies toward Kinesis' face with immense force, yet Elk doesn't even blink, meeting the attack with a cold, indifferent gaze. Kinesis remains motionless, the impact of the attack resulting in nothing more than a violent shockwave that blasts outward from his position. The crowd is left in utter disbelief, unable to process what just happened. As they gaze at the arena, they realize the attacker has completely disappeared, leaving the observers questioning if they even saw a skill being used. Gumbo is launched high into the sky, crashing violently into the top of a massive pillar. The crowd is left in utter shock, wondering what kind of skill could produce such a devastating and instantaneous result. However, Yuna and the student beside her observe the scene with a different perspective, noting that what Kinesis used was not a skill at all. Elwood is stunned as he breaks down the move. He realizes that Elk completely converted Gumbo's thrust into his own power to throw him away. He concludes that this is a form of martial arts, likely a type of self-defense or Aikido, executed with incredible mastery and precision. Gumbo grits his teeth in frustration, unable to believe that he was so easily overpowered without Kinesis even needing to employ a skill. Refusing to stay down, Gumbo pushes past his shock. Driven by his pride as a man, he activates a powerful skill evolution, weaponization. Gumbo quickly recovers, grabbing onto the broken pillar to propel himself back into the fight with renewed intensity. As he charges, he realizes that Kinesis is still fighting without using any skills or even drawing his sword. Fueled by this observation, Gumbo believes that if Elk lets his guard down, he might still find a way to secure victory. Kinesis swiftly dodges Gumbo's fierce assault with a simple whoosh. Watching the battle, Elwood acknowledges Gumbo's impressive physical enhancement, noting that he would easily rank among the top tiers of the academy. Gumbo, momentarily distracted, is honestly happy to receive such high praise. Kinesis chuckles, questioning if Gumbo is truly Elwood's friend after the previous exchange. Unfazed and still determined, Gumbo retorts, challenging Elk to actually land a hit on him first. With a smug and confident expression, Kinesis repeats the challenge for Gumbo to hit him. He looks down on his opponent, coldly remarking that Gumbo's desperate attempts are simply pathetic. Gumbo shouts back in defiance, refusing to let Elk belittle his efforts. Nearby, Elwood watches the confrontation, his gaze fixed on Gumbo's raw determination. With a sudden and powerful strike, Kinesis overwhelms Gumbo, sending him reeling from the impact. As he crushes Gumbo's spirit and body, Elk coldly declares that his efforts are simply too pathetic. Gumbo is left in shock, questioning if this is the true power of a genius. As his steel barrage is perfectly deflected, Yuna watches closely, remarking that Gumbo, being in the heat of the battle, should be the one to understand this gap in strength the most. Gumbo continues his assault, but he is struck by the sheer hardness of Elk's defense. Realizing the stalemate in their physical exchange, Gumbo notes that neither of them seems to be taking damage from the other's attacks. Gumbo is caught completely off guard, sent crashing to the ground with a loud thud. He scoffs, believing Elk is simply trying to use kicks to break through his hardened defense. But as he recovers, a look of realization hits him. He was hit by a direct attack, but rather tripped by the debris left behind from Elk's earlier missed strike. Taking advantage of the opening, Kinesis lands a precise blow to Gumbo's chest. Gumbo scoffs, believing his iron body is far too durable to be damaged by such an attack. But his confidence instantly vanishes as he coughs up blood in utter shock. Gumbo collapses to the ground, coughing violently in pain as he struggles to recover. Kinesis stands over him with a cold, indifferent gaze, remarking that it seems Gumbo's internal organs aren't made of steel after all. Rin is left in disbelief as she analyzes the fight. She realizes that Elk quickly deduced that surface blows were useless against Gumbo's defense, so he cleverly used his palm and debris to strike deep and cause devastating internal damage. Panting heavily and struggling to recover, Gumbo grits his teeth, declaring that he isn't finished yet. Kinesis simply watches him, calmly questioning why he is still trying to come at him. Despite his internal injuries, Gumbo's eyes flare with determination. He shouts with everything he has, declaring that if he can overcome Elk, he will finally claim the title of champion. Gumbo lets out a small, confident chuckle, completely absorbed in the idea of becoming the champion. Meanwhile, Kinesis simply watches him, seemingly indifferent to Gumbo's desperate ambition. Gumbo's momentary dream of becoming the champion is cut short as he lets out a gut-wrenching scream of agony. Kinesis doesn't let up, striking Gumbo with a powerful blow that sends him soaring backward. As Gumbo screams in agony, Elk reflects on the skill evolution used during the charge, realizing the sheer destructive power involved and deciding to create some distance between them. Kinesis reflects on the exchange, admitting he underestimated Gumbo after realizing the flashy arm skill was merely a feint. Gumbo, however, maintains a confident smirk, brushing off the move as nothing special, just a kick that barely grazed his opponent. While he maintains a smug exterior, Gumbo is secretly desperate. He clings to the hope that the attack he just landed, the one he claimed was merely a simple kick, was actually powerful enough to turn the tide of the battle. Standing amidst the swirling dust and debris, Kinesis remains completely composed. Unaffected by Gumbo's desperate strike, he looks forward with cold determination, stating that he wants to fight. Sweating and shaken, Gumbo finally draws his sword, preparing himself for the fight ahead. Having finally drawn his blade, Gumbo launches a devastating attack, unleashing a colossal slash of wind and energy that rips through the battlefield. Gumbo smirks with confidence, asking how about this, as his strike unleashes a devastating wave of force. The resulting gust of wind is so overwhelming that it obscures the battlefield, leaving Emma unable to see ahead and questioning the sheer power of the attack. Amidst the violent gust of wind, Kinesis remains completely unfazed. He calmly observes the technique, admitting that a whirlwind wrapped in a slash is impressive. But his steady gaze suggests he is far from defeated. Standing firmly amidst the cracked earth, Kinesis looks on with a smug expression. He dismisses Gumbo's powerful whirlwind slash as nothing more than a gentle breeze against his steel, mocking his opponent for revealing his first skill so easily. Moving with blinding speed, Kinesis strikes back, targeting the vulnerable joints of Gumbo's armor. As Gumbo reels from the impact, observes that the armor is thinner at the joints, making this precise attack far more effective than any crude technique used before. Kinesis looks down at Gumbo with a calm, almost pitying expression. He asks if he has successfully figured out Gumbo's skill, then coldly suggests that Gumbo should surrender before he gets hurt any further, noting that everyone has already seen enough of his brave display. Gumbo can only shout in frustration and disbelief. Enraged by the insults, Gumbo shouts back, questioning if Elk's second skill is simply talking back. He defiantly dares Elk to try and cut through his steel armor and take his head off. Realizing that he is utterly outclassed in both technique and skill, Gumbo feels the overwhelming gap between them. Yet, refusing to be defeated so easily, he screams that he still possesses one thing, a man's pride. With a roar of determination, he lunges forward in a fierce, desperate strike against the calm Elkinesis. Elkinesis admits that while Gumbo's sword movements were too fast to track, the predictability of the target made the attack easy to anticipate. With his blade now held right at Gumbo's throat, Elk mocks him for the stupidity of aiming for his neck. Looking on from behind, Elkinesis' tone shifts, as he admits that he is actually the one who should be thankful, having found an unexpected enjoyment in fighting Gumbo. A sudden, violent gust of wind rips through the arena, prompting Myra to exclaim in surprise at its return. Watching the scene intently, Mina realizes that this isn't just a repeat of previous events. Sensing that something fundamentally different is occurring, the sudden gust of wind throws the spectators into total chaos. Blinded by the dust and wind, the Aven shout in confusion, demanding to see the match and pleading with Elwood for an explanation of what is happening. As the powerful wind continues to ravage the arena, Elwood stands in confusion, unsettled by the strange phenomenon and wondering what will happen next. The source of the chaos is revealed as a massive armored arm descends upon the arena, crushing the ground and whipping up violent winds. In the face of such overwhelming scale, Elkinesis appears as a mere speck amidst the ruins. In a sudden, violent flash, Gumbo is sliced clean in half, his body torn apart. Mira and Mina watch in horror, screaming his name as they witness the brutality of the strike. Terrified and confused, they demand an explanation from Elwood, wondering how Gumbo could be destroyed so instantly the moment the wind ceased. Elwood stands frozen in confusion, unable to comprehend what just happened. On the ground, Gumbo writhes in pain, letting out a guttural scream as he reels from the devastating injury. Elk laughs, impressed that Gumbo is still conscious after such a brutal strike, remarking that he might be the toughest opponent he has ever fought. Gumbo, completely broken and unable to move a single finger, can only pant in defeat, admitting that he has lost to a true genius. As the battle concludes, the silence of the arena is broken by the sound of applause. The Aven watch in awe and admiration, clapping for the absolute dominance Elkinesis showed over his opponent. The swordmaster gazes down at Gumbo, who remains defeated and bloodied on the arena floor. Roshuo Kinesis looks on with a bewildered expression, stating that he was supposed to be next and questioning why the match is already over. Meanwhile, Elkinesis stares at him with suspicion, wondering what Roshuo is planning. With a cold and disdainful gaze, the swordmaster looks down at the fallen Gumbo, bluntly telling the loser to get lost. Gumbo remains motionless on the arena floor, completely broken. Beside him, Elwood reaches out in a panic, screaming for Roshuo to stop. Roshuo coldly commands Mans to stop, while Gumbo lies on the ground, realizing in horror that he can no longer move his legs. From under his hood, Elk observes the situation, questioning the nature of the skill being used and his own role as the intended opponent. Finally, Roshuo addresses Elk, telling him to leave the defeated Gumbo to him. The announcer clears his throat, noting the sudden situation, but declares that since both participants are now present in the arena, they will proceed. With both participants now present, the announcer's voice booms across the arena, declaring the start of the final match. The swordmaster stands poised and ready for the battle to begin. A wide shot reveals the grand scale of the arena, while the Aven in the stands watch with anticipation, waiting to see the clash unfold. Sia calls out to Emma, reminding her that Elk's match is finally starting. However, Emma stops in her tracks, feeling a strange presence and wondering what is happening in the arena. Emma reaches into her attire and grabs a hidden object. Her expression serious as she realizes this is the moment to use something meant for emergencies. The crowd erupts in excitement, with Aven screaming Roshua's name in adoration as the final match kicks off. The entire stadium shakes with the thunderous cheers of the crowd, their excitement reaching a fever pitch as the final match officially begins. As the arena erupts in excitement, Elkinesis watches from beneath his hood. He reflects on the admiration and yearning of the crowd, thinking to himself that those who have nothing are truly pitiful. Elk's cold gaze remains fixed on Roshuo Kinesis. To him, the crowd's deafening cheers are nothing more than a pathetic projection of their own insignificance onto someone they perceive as all-powerful. Roshuo Kinesis assumes a precise sword stance, a technique Elk recognizes as the traditional style of the Kinesis family. With a confident smirk, Roshuo tells the hooded Elk that he isn't in the mood to play around like Elwood did, leaving Elk to question the meaning of the word. Confused by Elk's response, Roshuo Kinesis asks if he is suggesting that dragging out a match against a weak opponent is merely playing. Elk Kinesis mutters that Roshuo hasn't changed, leaving the other man momentarily confused. However, Roshuo quickly brushes it off, deciding to end the encounter immediately. Known as the Sword Saint of the Kinesis family, Roshuo lunges forward with his blade, determined to finish the final match in an instant. With a fierce expression, Roshuo Kinesis strikes forward, declaring that the match has begun and he will cut Elk-Kinesis to pieces. Elk-Kinesis manages to intercept Roshua's devastating blow using a hidden blade, stopping the sword in a shower of sparks. Roshua smirks, questioning if Elk can truly react to his speed, and admitting that he had intended to cut off Elk's arm, though he is impressed by the fine piece of steel Elk used to defend himself. Roshua leaps back from the impact, his boot sliding across the ground as he regains his footing. Looking back at the Elk-Kinesis, he is forced to acknowledge Elk's competence, noting that he is surprisingly good. Remaining composed, Elk-Kinesis looks toward Roshio and asks with a cold tone, "Do you enjoy cutting people?" Stunned by the question, Roshio-Kinesis is left speechless, his confident demeanor momentarily shattered. Recovering his composure, Roshio-Kinesis gives a chilling answer, admitting that he enjoys the feeling of cutting people, but finds his status and privilege even more satisfying. A wide view of the arena as Roshio-Kinesis declares that those with power can do whatever they want to the weak, claiming such acts are a privilege reserved only for the strong. Roshio-Kinesis continues his lecture on power, smugly asserting that whether it is money, skills, or authority, they all serve the same purpose of dominating the weak. Elk-Kinesis looms over his opponent, his hand reaching out as he coldly declares the absolute difference between their skills, reminding Roshuo that his life is now entirely in his hands. Following his declaration of dominance, Elk-Kinesis moves with blinding speed, executing a perfect sword technique. Like this, he says, effortlessly showing Roshuo the insurmountable gap between their abilities. In a flash of blinding light, Elk-Kinesis delivers a devastating cross-slash, showcasing his absolute dominance on the battlefield. Roshuo-Kinesis is left in complete disbelief as Elk-Kinesis effortlessly blocks Elk's attack. He begins to realize that Elk possesses a special skill and a vast array of techniques that far exceed his own expectations. Elk-Kinesis continues his relentless assault, unleashing a powerful air blade slash followed by a void-cutting blade. With absolute dominance, he declares his intent to seal Roshua's pathetic skill. Sarissa-Kinesis watches the scene with a cold expression, noting that at this rate her brother won't even be left in one piece. Roshua-Kinesis is frozen in terror, shouting in disbelief as he realizes the absolute gap in power. Roshuo is left in utter disbelief, unable to comprehend how Elk could take such a powerful attack without a single scratch. As the shock settles, Elk's mask pops off, beginning the revelation of his true face. Sarissa watches in shock, unable to believe what she is seeing. Ro is paralyzed with terror, his mind racing as the truth sinks in. That guy is still alive. As they tremble in fear, Elk's gloved hand continues to pull away his mask, preparing to reveal his face. With his mask removed, Elk-Kinesis looks on with a composed expression, remarking that they don't seem surprised by his survival. Roshuo-Kinesis lets out a mocking laugh, his expression shifting to one of arrogant amusement. He dismisses the idea of being surprised and tells Elk that he is actually happy to see him alive. Roshuo-Kinesis looks on with a twisted, sadistic smile, clutching his weapon. He recalls how the sensation of cutting Elk is still deeply ingrained in his arm, admitting that Elk was the one who taught him the joy of cutting people. With a dark hunger in his eyes, he declares his desire to experience that feeling once more. With a smug and sadistic expression, Roshuo-Kinesis readies his blade for the kill. However, his confidence is instantly shattered as an invisible force strikes him, forcing a startled cry of pain from his lips. Roshua's sword is violently knocked from his grip as he doubles over in agony. Standing before him, Elk-Kinesis asks with cold indifference if that scream is from pain or the sadness of being unable to even swing his sword. Elk-Kinesis looks down at the trembling Roshuo with a cold, piercing gaze. He reveals that he could have easily gone for the neck, reminding Roshuo that there is an absolute difference between their skills. The swordmaster looks toward Elk, questioning the roundabout method he used to return, and demanding to know what his true goal is. With a condescending smirk, Roshuo-Kinesis looks down on Elk. He mockingly asks if Elk hopes to return to the ducal house, coldly declaring that he is the successor now, and that someone like Elk has no authority to do so. Covering his face with his hand, Elk-Kinesis asks with cold indifference if Roshuo really thinks he ever wanted to return to that house. Elk-Kinesis speaks with cold detachment, stating that even if he were to return, there is no place for him in the ducal house. He reveals the harsh truth. He was abandoned by his father from the very beginning, and the duel he once fought was nothing more than a farce orchestrated by the Duke. Elk-Kinesis looks toward the swordmaster and declares that the answer is clear. The swordmaster, visibly shaken by the revelation, can only stutter in response. Elk-Kinesis' voice echoes with cold determination as he reveals his true purpose. He declares that he cannot forgive the Kinesis family or his father for their betrayal, stating clearly that his goal is revenge. The swordmaster looks on, completely stunned by the intensity of Elk's hatred. Elk-Kinesis' expression hardens as he recalls the agony of his past. With a voice full of resolve, He declares that the pain he suffered will be returned tenfold to those who betrayed him. With a cold and determined expression, Elk Kinesis admits that his thoughts had remained unchanged until recently. Standing amidst the ruins of the arena, Elk Kinesis reflects on his growth. He declares that he has found a place and comrades far more precious to him than the Kinesis family ever was. Completely thrown off by Elk's sudden change of heart, the Swordmaster can only respond with a confused ha. Elk then asks him pointedly, "Then what do you want?" Floating high above the arena, Elk Kinesis looks down at his opponent with absolute dominance, coldly commanding Roshuo to surrender. Elk Kinesis looks down at the defeated Roshuo, coldly stating that he doesn't understand his opponent's confusion. He then throws Roshuo's own words back at him, questioning if he remembers claiming that those with power can do whatever they want to the weak. With a cold and piercing gaze, Elk Kinesis bluntly tells Roshuo that the fact someone as hopeless as him is blood-related to him is a thought that frequently crosses his mind. Elk Kinesis clenches his fist tightly. Despite the deep-seated hatred and the shame of their blood relation, he admits that simply hurting Roshuo is not something he wants to do. Elk Kinesis stands firm in the arena, his resolve clear. He declares that his only focus now is to deliver a swift victory for those who are waiting for the match to conclude. Emma calls out to Elk, her face filled with worry. Meanwhile, the spectators in the arena are left bewildered, wondering why the intense battle has suddenly come to a standstill. Elk Kinesis stands alone in the center of the arena, his silhouette framed by a blinding light that emphasizes his overwhelming presence. Lying broken on the ground, Roshuo Kinesis stares back in utter disbelief. Overwhelmed by the situation, he can only stammer, questioning if Elk still considers him family. Overwhelmed by Elk's unexpected mercy, Roshuo Kinesis cries out in desperation. He reminds Elk that he tried to kill him on the old man's orders, and begs Elk to curse him or beat him up, unable to understand why Elk still treats him with such kindness. Roshuo Kinesis looks up with a face full of sorrow, softly apologizing and calling Elk Nizan. Although Elk had remained completely focused and flawless since the start of the match, this sudden display of vulnerability shakes his heart, leaving him momentarily open. Seizing the moment of Elk's hesitation, Roshuo Kinesis performs a brutal blood quick draw, tearing off his own broken finger to unleash a spray of blood. Normally, such an attack would be trivial for Elk, but the emotional waver in his heart leaves him vulnerable, allowing the blood to splash across his face and obscure his vision. The camera pulls back to show the vastness of the arena, with Elk and Roshuo as small figures amidst the ruins of the platform. Then, in a sudden and visceral close-up, blood splashes across the scene, blinding Elk and completing Roshuo's desperate gamble. In the stands, Emma gasps in shock as she witnesses the brutal turn of events. Roshuo's blade drives deep into Elk's back, the surprise attack finally landing. As he strikes, Shu remarks that Elk has always been like this, while Elk simply thinks to himself that his brother is annoyingly kind.